My son-in-law Greg stared at me across the boardroom, his face pale as ash. "This isn't possible," he stammered. "You're just a retired teacher. You live on a pension." I simply nodded to my business partner. "Marcus, call security." As the guards dragged Greg out, my daughter Alicia finally understood. The man she married hadn't just underestimated me. He had bet his entire future on the idea that I was a broke, senile old man, and he had just lost everything. Before I tell you how I unraveled a conspiracy that started right in my own living room, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you've ever had to show someone your true strength, hit that like button and subscribe. It all started last Saturday, my 76th birthday. My son-in-law Greg insisted on throwing the party. He said it was to celebrate my health. Now I know he was just sizing up the property. My small, humble house in Atlanta was packed, not with my friends, but with his. Strangers in expensive suits drinking my whiskey, patting me on the head like I was a well-behaved dog. Greg stood by the fireplace, his arm draped around my daughter Alicia. He raised his glass, his voice booming with fake sincerity. "To Elias, a man who has worked hard his whole life. Now it's our turn to take care of him." Everyone clapped. Alicia looked nervous, twisting the ring on her finger. I just smiled. I taught history for 40 years. I know a bad actor when I see one. The applause died down. My 10-year-old granddaughter Imani slipped through the crowd. She was holding a paper plate with a slice of cake. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with a fear that no child should ever have. She leaned in close, pretending to give me a kiss on the cheek. Her voice was a tiny whisper against my old ear. "Grandpa, don't sign anything." My blood ran cold. I kept the smile frozen on my face. "What did you say, baby girl? Don't sign anything," she repeated, her voice trembling. "I heard them. In the car, Mommy and Daddy. They said after the party they're going to get you to sign papers. They're going to take all your money. Tonight." The slice of cake in my hand suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I looked across the room. I saw Greg, my daughter's husband. He was laughing, telling some loud joke to his friends. But his eyes kept flicking over to me, checking on me, like a wolf checking on a trap. He wasn't looking at a father-in-law. He was looking at a payday. I knew Greg was greedy. I had seen the way he looked at my things. Not my old furniture, but the original paintings on the wall I'd told him were just prints. The way his eyes lingered on the grandfather clock my late wife Rosalind had inherited. He saw dollar signs everywhere. But this was a new level of darkness, to use my own daughter against me, to plan it for my birthday. I put my hand on Imani's head. "Thank you, baby. You did the right thing. You are so brave. Now go play. Don't let them see you worried. This is Grandpa's problem now." She nodded and ran off, disappearing into the crowd. I stood there, surrounded by noise and laughter, feeling completely and totally alone. I'm Elias Vance, 76 years old. To my family, I'm just a retired history teacher, a widower living on a fixed income. They think this house, this furniture, and a small savings account is all I have in the world. They have no idea who I am. They don't know that Eli Vance, the teacher, was just a role I took on after my wife died. It was a way to live a simple life, to raise my daughter Alicia away from the poison of wealth. They don't know that I am Elias Vance, the co-founder and silent majority shareholder of Vanguard Strategies, one of the largest private equity firms in the South. They don't know that my best friend Marcus Reynolds, the man they've only heard me call my old army buddy, is the CEO who runs the entire operation for me. They don't know that my small savings account is a portfolio worth over $200 million. And they definitely don't know that the prestigious real estate firm Greg works for is a tenant in a building that I own. Greg has always pitied me. He's a white man who married into what he thought was a simple working-class black family. He treats me with that smug, condescending kindness that barely hides his disdain. He thinks I'm old. He thinks I'm poor. He thinks I'm stupid. He's about to find out how catastrophically wrong he is on all three counts. The party finally died down. The last of Greg's friends clapped him on the back and stumbled out the front door. Alicia started gathering plates, her hands shaking so badly she dropped a fork. "That was a wonderful party, son," I said, my voice deliberately frail. Greg shut the door. The smile vanished from his face, replaced by a look of cold business. "I'm glad you enjoyed it, Dad," he said. He walked over to his expensive leather briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. This was it. The moment Imani warned me about. He dropped the folder onto the coffee table with a heavy final thud. "Now, Dad, about our little talk." I looked at the folder. "My goodness, Greg, that's a lot of paper just for some health forms." "Well," Greg said, sitting down, leaning forward, his eyes gleaming, "it's a little more than that. It's a durable power of attorney and a few other documents to consolidate your assets." Consolidate my assets. The assets he thought I had. He wanted my house. He wanted my pension. Alicia came over, wiping her hands on her apron. "It's for the best, Daddy. You're 76 now. You shouldn't have to worry about bills or property taxes or anything." I knew exactly what that document was. It was a legal weapon to strip me of everything. My mind raced. Imani's warning had given me a few minutes to think, but I needed more. I needed days. I reached for the folder, making sure my hand trembled just enough. "Oh my, I see." I opened it to the first page and squinted. "But it's so late, son. My eyes are tired. I can't seem to read the fine print." I saw a flash of pure anger in Greg's eyes. He wanted this done tonight. He was impatient. But Alicia, my daughter, still had a scrap of conscience left. "Greg, he's right. It's late. We can do this tomorrow. It's no big deal." Greg looked at her, then at me. He was trapped. He couldn't look like a monster in front of his wife. Not yet. He forced another smile. "Of course. You're right. Tomorrow is fine. We'll come by in the morning. You just rest up, Dad. We'll handle everything." They left. I listened as their car sped away, tires squealing just a little. I stood by the window for a long time, watching the taillights disappear. They thought they were giving me one last night. They thought they were coming back tomorrow to claim their prize. They didn't realize they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They had given me time. I turned from the window. I wasn't tired. I wasn't frail. And I certainly wasn't confused. I picked up my phone. It was almost midnight. I dialed the number for my best friend, my partner, the CEO of my company. Marcus Reynolds, a night owl just like me, picked up on the first ring. "Mark," I said, my voice no longer trembling. It was cold. "They're here. At the house. They just left. They're coming back tomorrow to finish the job." I heard the sound of a heavy sigh on his end. "The legal team is ready, Eli. I've been warning you about that boy for years." "What's the play?" "The play," I said, walking over to my desk and pulling out my own set of files, "is that they think they're hunting a sheep. It's time to remind them what a lion looks like." I didn't sleep. You don't sleep when you've just discovered your only daughter is complicit in a plan to rob you blind. You don't sleep when you hear your own 10-year-old granddaughter whispering about it in fear. You sit in your old armchair, the one my late wife Rosalind always said was worn down perfectly to my shape. And you listen. You listen to the silence of the house. You listen to the old grandfather clock in the hall, the one Greg and Alicia were admiring last week, the one they were probably already pricing out. Tick, tock. You listen to the seconds of your old life ticking away. At 5:30 in the morning, the Atlanta sky was just beginning to turn from black to a bruised grayish purple. I got up. I didn't make coffee. I didn't want the smell to wake them if they decided to come back early. I went to my closet. I pushed past the simple flannel shirts and khaki pants. The uniform they knew. The uniform of Elias Vance, retired history teacher. In the back, behind a false panel I built myself 40 years ago, was my other life. I pulled out a simple, dark gray suit. It wasn't flashy, it was just expensive. The kind of expensive that whispers, not shouts. But I didn't put it on. Not yet. I put on my costume, my old work jacket, my worn-out boots, my faded Atlanta Braves baseball cap. I walked out to my truck. It's a 1998 Ford Ranger. It coughs to life every morning, the engine rattling like a can of old nails. Greg offered to get rid of that piece of junk for me last Christmas. He said it was an embarrassment. I told him I was attached to it. The truth is, it was the perfect camouflage. I rattled down my quiet residential street, just another old man heading out for an early breakfast at the diner. But I didn't go to the diner. I drove downtown. At 6:15 a.m., the city was just waking up. I pulled the old truck into the private underground garage of the Vanguard Strategies Tower, a monolith of black glass and steel that pierced the skyline. The security guard in the booth didn't blink. He knew the truck. He knew me. "Morning, Mr. Vance," he said, tipping his hat. I didn't use the main lobby, I never do. My fingerprint opened a private elevator tucked away in the garage. The ride was silent, smooth. It opened not onto a reception area, but directly into the penthouse office. Marcus Reynolds was already there. He was 75, a full year younger than me, but he looked like a king on his throne. He wore a perfectly tailored three-piece suit, a habit he never lost from his days on Wall Street. He was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, holding a cup of coffee, looking down at the city we had built. "Eli," he said, his voice a low rumble. He didn't turn around. "You look like hell." "I feel like it, Mark." He turned. His eyes were sharp, missing nothing. "You finally believe me about that white boy, don't you? I told you from day one. I told you at the wedding. He had greedy eyes." "You did," I admitted. I walked over to the Onyx bar and poured myself a black coffee. The aroma was rich, smoky, nothing like the instant coffee I drank at home. "But she loves him, Mark. I wanted to believe." "She loves what he represents," Marcus said flatly, sitting down at his massive mahogany desk. "A fast, easy life." I sat across from him. The leather chair sighed under my weight. "Why did I do it, Mark? Why did I hide it all? Maybe if Alicia knew, maybe if she'd grown up with this." I motioned around the opulent office, the original Romare Bearden painting on the wall, the panoramic view of Atlanta. "She would have been worse," Marcus said. "Don't you dare second-guess yourself now. Not now." He was right. I had to explain this. "You remember Rosalind," I said. My voice was quiet. "My late wife, the love of my life." "How could I forget her?" Marcus said softly. "She never wanted this," I said, sweeping my hand toward the window. "Rosalind grew up poor in Vine City. She saw what new money did to people back in the 70s. She saw families get poisoned by it, eaten from the inside out." "I remember," he nodded. "When we founded Vanguard, when that first big contract with the city came through, when the first real checks started rolling in, she made me promise. 'Don't let this touch Alicia,' she said. 'Let her grow up normal. Let her scrape her knees. Let her marry a man who loves her, not the Vanguard fortune.' So I did," I continued. "When Rosalind passed, I doubled down. I bought the house on the south side. I kept my job as a history teacher as my cover. I built a firewall between my life and my money. I looked down at my old calloused hands. And I failed her, Mark. I failed completely. I protected Alicia from the money, but I didn't protect her from greed. She found a man who smells weakness like a shark smells blood. And I was so busy pretending to be weak, I didn't see him turning her against me. I didn't see him poisoning my own daughter." Marcus let the silence sit for a moment. He had always been the patient one, the strategist. I was the heart, he was the brain. That's why we worked. Then he leaned forward. He pushed a thick, spiral-bound report across the desk. The cover was simple. It just said Gregory T. Miller. "Eli," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a low growl. "Your plan didn't fail. It was working. You raised a good kid, a weak kid maybe, but not a bad one. He is the problem. And you're not seeing the whole picture." "What picture?" Marcus tapped the report. "The legal team has been digging since you called me at midnight. This isn't about Greg wanting your house so he can move in and have a nicer life." He paused, and the look in his eyes scared me more than anything Greg had done. "The situation is worse than you think, Eli. A whole lot worse. That son-in-law of yours. Greg isn't just greedy. He's desperate." I stared at the name on the cover. Gregory T. Miller. My son-in-law. My daughter's husband. "How desperate, Mark?" I asked again, my voice barely a whisper. Marcus didn't answer. He just nodded to a man standing in the corner I hadn't even noticed. He was young, sharp, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my truck. "Mr. Harrison," Marcus said, "you're our head of internal security. Tell Mr. Vance what you found." Mr. Harrison stepped forward, holding a tablet. He didn't look at me with pity. He looked at me like a soldier reporting to his general. "Mr. Vance, we started with his employment. We found that Gregory Miller was fired from his brokerage firm Highland Financial 6 months ago. I felt a jolt. Fired Alicia told me he got a promotion. He lied, sir. Harrison said, his voice flat, emotionless. He's been unemployed for half a year. He told his wife he was working from home as a consultant. In reality, he's been spending his days at sports bars or meeting with other associates. So he's broke, I said. That's why he needs the house. Marcus let out a short, bitter laugh. Broke, oh, Eli, it's so much worse than that. Tell him the rest, Harrison. Harrison swiped his screen. Mr. Miller wasn't just fired for poor performance. He was allowed to resign while under internal investigation for embezzlement. The word hung in the air. Embezzlement. What are we talking about? $1.2 million, sir, Harrison said. I gripped the arms of the leather chair. 1.2 million. How from who? From his clients, specifically from their retirement funds. It seems Mr. Miller was running a private off-the-books investment scheme. He promised his clients massive returns, took their money, and, well, it appears he lost most of it on a series of bad high-risk trades. I thought of Greg. I thought of him at my birthday party patting me on the head, telling me he would take care of me. The man who called me a broke old teacher was $1 million thief. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. Marcus leaned forward. The firm kept it quiet, Eli. They didn't want the scandal. They just wanted him gone. But the SEC got an anonymous tip 2 months ago. They're involved now. A federal indictment isn't a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Now it all made sense. The expensive car he leased for Alicia, the designer handbag she'd been carrying, the constant talk of commissions and bonuses. It was all funded by stolen money, stolen from old people, people like me. But that's not the urgent part, Mr. Harrison continued, his voice even colder. He didn't just steal Mr. Vance. He's been trying to cover his tracks. He's been borrowing heavily. From who? What bank would lend him money? Marcus and Harrison exchanged a dark look. Not a bank, Harrison said. He's been borrowing from an unofficial lender, a local organization known as the Clayton County Trust. I knew that name. Everyone in Atlanta knows that name. You see it in the crime reports. They aren't bankers. They're butchers. Loan sharks of the most violent kind. How much? I whispered. $200,000, Harrison said. He borrowed it 3 months ago, telling them he had a family inheritance coming. He used it to pay back one of his most aggressive clients trying to stop the man from going to the authorities. And the loan? I asked, already knowing the answer. It's due in 10 days. There it was. The entire picture painted in blood and greed. 10 days. The party wasn't a celebration. It was a deadline. The fake concern, the rush, the thick folder of papers. It all lined up perfectly. He needed to have me declared incompetent. He needed that power of attorney. He needed to get a mortgage on my house or sell it fast. He needed to liquidate my assets before those men came to liquidate him. This wasn't just about greed anymore. This was about survival. He was a cornered rat. And cornered rats will do anything to escape. They'll chew off their own legs, or in this case, they'll sell out their own family. They'll steal from a 76-year-old man. They'll turn a loving daughter against her father. My daughter, Alicia. The anger in my chest suddenly gave way to a wave of terrible sadness. How could she not know? How could she be so blind? He must have fed her a mountain of lies. He must have twisted her mind. I looked up at Marcus. The report felt like a block of lead in my lap. He's a monster, Mark, I said. A desperate, pathetic monster. I closed the report. I couldn't look at it anymore. But Alicia, my daughter, she doesn't know. She can't. She's just been fooled. She's my daughter, Mark. She's just fooled. Marcus held my gaze. He didn't say anything, but the look in his eyes, a look of deep, profound pity, told me that the next part of this story was going to be even worse. I looked up at Marcus, my hands shaking, but I was clinging to one last thread of hope. He's a monster, Mark, I said, my voice thick. A desperate, pathetic monster. He's cornered. He's dragging her into this. But Alicia, my daughter, she doesn't know. She can't. I needed to believe it. I needed to believe that the girl I raised, the daughter of my sweet Rosalind, was just a victim. She's been fooled, Mark, that's all. Greg is a con man. He's conning her just like he conned his clients. She's my daughter. She's just fooled. Marcus held my gaze. He didn't say anything for a long, heavy moment. The pity in his eyes was so deep it hurt to look at. He slowly shook his head. Eli, he said, and his voice was gentle. The way you talk to a man right before you tell him someone has died. I hoped you wouldn't make me show you this. I hoped it was just him. I really did. He slid another document across the massive desk. It wasn't a financial report. It was a single-page transcript, a summary of a phone call. I frowned, picking it up. What is this? You remember Dr. Peterson? Marcus asked. Of course. My doctor, our family doctor for 30 years. I've known Pete since we were both young men. Pete called me 2 weeks ago, Eli, right after Alicia paid him a visit, an unscheduled visit, without you. My blood went cold. I remembered Pete calling me. I had been in my workshop tinkering with an old radio. His voice had sounded strange. Eli, you feeling all right, man? He'd asked. I'd laughed. Never been better, Pete. Just fixing this old Zenith. What's on your mind? Well, he'd hesitated. Alicia was just here, in my office. She seems very concerned about your memory. I remember I rolled my eyes, a warm, foolish smile on my face. Oh, that's just Alicia, I'd said. You know how she is. She's been watching too many movies. She thinks because I forgot where I put my keys last week, I'm 1 foot in the grave. Tell her I'm fine. Eli, she was saying she said you were leaving the stove on. I have an induction cooktop, Pete. It turns itself off. She's just a worrier. Don't you worry about it. All right, Eli, if you say so, just take care of yourself. I had hung up the phone and shaken my head, feeling a stupid, misguided pride. My daughter loved me so much she was overly worried. Now I looked at the transcript in my hand. It was the notes Dr. Peterson had his nurse type up immediately after Alicia left. He'd sent it to Marcus because he knew something was wrong. He knew me. And he knew the woman he saw in his office was not a worried daughter. I read the words. My vision blurred. Subject Alicia Miller, re Elias Vance. Patient's daughter. Alicia arrived without an appointment, visibly agitated. Claimed her father, Elias Vance, is exhibiting severe signs of cognitive decline. Claimed Mr. Vance forgot her birthday last month. A lie. I had sent her a $5,000 check, the one she and Greg probably spent in a weekend. Claimed Mr. Vance is leaving the gas stove on overnight. A lie. A stupid, clumsy lie that I had dismissed. Claimed Mr. Vance is getting lost during his daily walks and has been found wandering by neighbors. A lie. My neighbors and I have coffee on the porch every morning. Claimed Mr. Vance has been heard talking to his late wife Rosalind in empty rooms. This was the one that cut me. This was the one that felt like a snake's fang. I talk about Rosalind all the time. I tell Imani stories about her grandmother. But to her, Alicia had twisted my love, my memory of my wife, and turned it into a symptom of insanity. I read on my hands trembling. Daughter repeatedly asked for a medical attestation, used phrases like medically compromised and needs full-time management for his own safety. When I refused, stating that Mr. Vance is my patient and is in perfect mental and physical health for his age, Ms. Miller became hostile. Transcript of final exchange. Alice IA. Doctor, you don't understand. He's a danger to himself. We are prepared to take on that burden. Greg and I, we just need the paperwork. Dr. Peterson. Alicia, I will not sign any such document. Your father is sharper than most men half his age. In fact, I find this entire request highly irregular and deeply disturbing. Alicia. Then you're not helping us. You're failing him. If you don't sign it and something happens to him, it will be on your conscience. I dropped the paper. It fluttered to the expensive carpet. This was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks before the party. 2 weeks before they brought me that folder. It wasn't a new idea. It wasn't Greg's desperate last-minute plan. It was a long-term calculated strategy. And Alicia, my daughter, she was the one who had gone to the doctor. She was the one who had told the specific cruel lies. She was the one who had tried to build the medical case against me. All those times in the last few months, when she'd asked me the same question twice in one conversation. Dad, did you take your pills? Yes, baby, I told you I did. Oh, sorry, I forgot. She wasn't forgetting. She was testing me. She was gathering evidence. All those worried looks she'd give Greg when I'd tell a story I'd told before. It wasn't concern, it was a performance. Greg was the desperate fool in the trap. But Alicia, she was the one who had set the bait. She wasn't fooled. She wasn't tricked. She wasn't a victim. She was a co-conspirator. No. I looked at the transcript again. She wasn't a co-conspirator. She was the architect. I sat there in Marcus's office, the silence heavy as a tomb. The city noise 50 stories below was just a dull roar. The transcript from Dr. Peterson's office lay on the desk between us. Alicia, my daughter, the architect of this whole thing. She was the one. I whispered the words, feeling like glass in my throat. Marcus just nodded slowly. His face was hard. She was the one, Eli. She laid the groundwork. Greg is just the desperate muscle, but she's the brain. She's been planting these seeds about your confusion for months. I felt a cold, deep anger, colder than the grief I felt for my wife. This was a different kind of death. It was the death of the one person I had left. She learned all the wrong lessons, Mark, I said, my voice quiet. I shielded her from the money, but I forgot to shield her from the desire for it. She has Rosalind's face, but she has a stranger's heart. So what's the next move? Marcus asked. We have the financials on Greg. We have Alicia's attempt to get you declared incompetent. We can fight this in court for years. No, I said, standing up. Years is what they want. They want to drain me in legal fees. They think I'm just a retired teacher with a small savings account. A legal battle would ruin me in their eyes. No, we end this now. I looked at Marcus. They want me to be weak. They want me to be confused. They want me to be a senile old man who needs help. I pulled out my phone. Fine, let's give them exactly what they want. What are you doing, Eli? I'm going to test her. One last time. I need to know. I need to hear it from her own mouth. I looked at Mr. Harrison, the security chief. Can you record this call? Everything. Every word. Harrison nodded, tapping a device on the desk. It's recording, Mr. Vance. I pressed Alicia's number. My thumb hovered over the call button. This was it, the last bridge, and I was about to set it on fire. It rang once, twice. She picked up immediately. She was probably waiting for my call, hoping I'd found the papers from last night. Daddy? Her voice was sweet, full of that fake, syrupy concern. Are you okay? Greg and I were so worried. You seemed so tired last night. I took a deep breath. I let my voice crack. I made it sound old, frail, and defeated. Alicia, baby. I'm not okay, I stammered. What is it, Daddy? What's wrong? I could hear the excitement, the anticipation just barely hidden beneath her worry. I've been thinking all night, I said, letting out a long, shaky sigh. You and Greg, you're right. I'm so tired of it all. The bills, the house, this big empty house. Oh, Daddy, she cooed. I think you were right, Alicia. Maybe it's time. Time for what? She asked, her voice sharp. Time for me to just rest. I was thinking, maybe I should just sell this house. It's too much for me. I'll sell it, and I'll give you and Amani the money, all of it, and I'll find a nice home. You know, a retirement community. You can help me find one. The silence on the other end was electric. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head. She was calculating. He's giving up. It's working. He's doing it himself. Then her voice came back, and it was so full of sudden joy it was sickening. Oh, Daddy, that's the best idea I've ever heard. I'm so proud of you for making this decision. It's so brave of you. Brave, the word she had used with Dr. Peterson. Yes, she continued, talking fast. You're doing the right thing. Don't you worry about a thing. Don't you lift a finger. You just rest. I'll have Greg handle all the paperwork. He's so good at that stuff. He'll find a buyer for the house. He'll find the perfect nursing home for you. Oh, Daddy, this is wonderful. You're finally going to be safe. Safe. She meant contained. Okay, baby, I whispered. Okay. You just tell Greg to send over whatever I need to sign. I'm too tired to read it. I just trust you, Alicia. I trust you to take care of everything. We will, Daddy. We will. I promise. She sounded like she was about to cry with happiness. You just sit tight. Greg will handle it today. I love you so much. I love you too, I said. And I hung up. I stared at the phone. My hand was steady. My eyes were dry. The last bit of hope, the last shred of a doubt that she was just a victim, was gone. She hadn't hesitated. She hadn't said, "No, Dad, you don't need a home." She hadn't said, "Let's talk about it." She had jumped on it, like a predator. Marcus looked at me, his face grim. "Eli, just wait," I said, holding up a hand. "Wait for it." We sat in silence. 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10. My laptop, which was sitting on the desk, pinged. A new email. It wasn't from Alicia, it was from Greg. Of course. She'd called him immediately. The subject line was, "The papers we talked about for your security." Marcus leaned over my shoulder as I opened it. It wasn't a real estate listing agreement. It wasn't a brochure for a nursing home. It was a thick 30-page PDF. And I didn't need to read the fine print this time. The title on the first page said it all. Last will and testament and full relinquishment of assets. I scrolled down. It wasn't just the house. It was everything. It gave him and Alicia full, immediate, and irrevocable control of all my assets, all my property, all my bank accounts, effective immediately upon my signature. And on the last page there was another document, a quitclaim deed. It transferred the ownership of my house to Gregory and Alicia Miller, joint tenants, for the sum of $1 in love. He hadn't even waited. He had it ready. He had it ready the whole time. I looked at Marcus. He didn't want to help me sell the house. He wanted me to give it to him. "And the best part, Eli," Marcus said, his voice dripping with ice. "Look at the notary line." I scrolled down. There was a space for my signature and a space for the notary's. The notary's name was already typed in. Sarah Klein. Harrison, the security chief, spoke from the corner. "We just ran her name, Mr. Vance. Sarah Klein isn't just a random notary. She's Greg Miller's primary attorney, the one who's been advising him on how to hide the embezzled funds." I closed the laptop. "They don't just want me out of the house," I said. "They want me on the street. They want me with nothing. They want me erased." "And they want it done today," Marcus added. "Before those loan sharks come calling. Before the SEC files its charges." I stood up. The anger was so cold and so pure it felt like peace. I finally knew exactly what I was dealing with. There were no more doubts. There was no more sadness. "All right, Mark," I said, walking to the door. "They want to play. Let's play." "What's the move?" I looked back at him, a feeling I hadn't felt in years stirring in my chest. "They want me to sign. They've even got their own crooked lawyer ready to notarize it. It would be rude to disappoint them." I smiled. "Call Greg. Tell him I'm ready to sign, tonight. But not just with him. I want a family dinner. To celebrate my retirement. I'll have Alicia cook. And I want his lawyer there, Sarah Klein, to make it all official. 7 p.m., my house. Tell them to bring the papers." Marcus grinned. "This," he said, "is going to be fun." I sat in Marcus's office staring at the small black digital recorder on his desk. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Mr. Harrison, the head of security, had just placed it there. "The team was successful, Mr. Vance," Harrison said. His voice was flat professional. "As you are the legal owner of your daughter's residence, we were able to gain entry under the guise of a security system upgrade this morning. The listening devices are active. This is the first file. It was recorded less than an hour ago." Less than an hour ago. Greg and Alicia would have just returned from their walkthrough with the realtor they'd hired to appraise my house, a meeting they didn't know I knew about. "Greg is home," Harrison continued, "but he's not with your daughter. A woman named Sarah Klein, his attorney, arrived 10 minutes after Alicia left to pick up Amani from school." "Play it," I said. Marcus hit the space bar on his laptop. The speakers hissed for a second, and then my house. I could hear the faint ticking of the grandfather clock I had given Alicia as a wedding present. Then Greg's voice, panicked, angry. "This is a disaster, Sarah. The old man is playing games. He's faking. I know he is." A woman's voice answered, smooth, cold. "Calm down, baby. You're spiraling. It's just one more day, so he's not as senile as we thought. It doesn't matter." "Baby," I looked at Marcus. His face was granite. He didn't even blink. He just stared at the speaker. I knew that term. It wasn't professional. It was personal. On the recording, I heard the clinking of ice in glasses. A heavy pour. "It does matter," Greg snapped. I have 10 days. 10, do you know what happens in 10 days if I don't give them their $200,000? They're not going to sue me, Sarah. They're going to break me. And they'll get in line, Sarah said, and I heard her laugh, a cold, sharp, ugly sound. The SEC is already building a case. Your wife's promotion story won't hold up for much longer. You need to stop panicking and start focusing. Greg's voice was muffled. You're right. I hate him. The old man just sitting there in his stupid flannel shirt pretending to be poor. He looks at me like he knows. And Alicia, she's useless. She actually believes he's confused. She's as stupid as he is. Sarah laughed again. Oh, come on. Her stupidity is our greatest asset. She's the perfect grieving, worried daughter. She's the one who went to the doctor. She's the one who will cry for the judge. She's our ticket. I felt the blood drain from my face. I thought of my wedding day. I thought of Alicia, just a little girl dancing with me. Her in her little white dress, me in my tuxedo. She had looked up at me and said, Daddy, you're the best man in the world. Now she was a ticket, an asset. Stupid. Okay, Greg said, his voice calmer. Okay, so what's the plan? He's expecting us tomorrow morning. He'll have his little questions. He'll want to read the papers. So let him. Sarah's voice was confident, predatory. Here's what we do. You walk in there with Alicia. You play the part, the loving son-in-law. Alicia plays the worried daughter. You get him to sign. He signs the quitclaim deed. He signs the power of attorney. He signs everything. You tell him it's just protection for his retirement. And the notary? Greg asked. I'll be there, Sarah said. I'll be the notary. I'll notarize it on the spot. It'll be airtight. I looked at Harrison. Is that legal? Harrison shook his head. Highly illegal. An attorney cannot notarize a document in which they have a vested interest. Especially not this. On the recording, Greg's voice was full of admiration. You're a genius. I know, she replied. The moment you have that signature, I file the deed electronically. The house is legally yours by noon. We list it for sale by 1 o'clock. But the money, Sarah... Greg's panic was rising again. A house sale takes weeks. I have 10 days. That's the beauty of it, baby, she cooed. Once the house is in your name, it's your asset. We take the deed to my other client, the private lender. He'll give us an immediate bridge loan against the property. We can have $300,000 in cash by Monday. My God. They had planned it all. A complete hostile takeover. There was a long silence on the tape, just the sound of ice clinking. Then Greg's voice low and cold. And, Alicia. My heart stopped. Sarah laughed. It was the last sound I would ever associate with anything human. What about her? She stays here. She can have the leftover debt. She can deal with her senile old dad who suddenly has nothing. By the time she figures out what happened, you and I will be looking at the ocean in Costa Rica. Costa Rica. He wasn't just paying his debts. He was running, with his lawyer, with my daughter's money. Another silence. I prayed. I prayed for my daughter. I prayed that my son-in-law, the man I had welcomed into my home, would show one shred of loyalty, 1 ounce of decency. Then I heard his laugh, a short, ugly barking sound. She deserves it, Greg said. She's almost as stupid as her father. The recording clicked off. Mr. Harrison stood silently. Marcus just stared at the recorder, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of his desk. I didn't move. I just sat there. I felt the anger. It wasn't hot. It wasn't explosive. It was cold. It was a cold, pure, righteous anger that settled deep in my bones. He wasn't just trying to rob me. He wasn't just trying to destroy me. He was planning to ruin my daughter. My Alicia. He was going to take her father's house, load her up with his own criminal debts, and then abandon her penniless to face the loan sharks he had crossed. He was going to leave her to be torn apart, and he was going to do it all with my money. I looked at Marcus. Get me the phone. Eli, what are you? Get me the phone. I said, my voice like iron. I'm calling him. I'm calling Greg. They want to play fine. It's time to set the trap. Mr. Harrison's hand didn't even tremble as he queued up the next file. This recording is from later that evening, Mr. Vance. After the attorney, Sarah Klein, had left, your daughter returned home with your granddaughter. The speakers hissed again. I heard the sound of my granddaughter Imani in the background. "Good night, Grandpa. I love you." She must have been shouting into a phone. A wave of sickness washed over me. They were using my granddaughter as cover. Then I heard Alicia's voice. My daughter. She sounded nervous, agitated. "Greg, he was strange on the phone this morning. He seemed hesitant. What if he changes his mind? What if he talks to someone?" "He's not going to talk to anyone," Greg snapped. His voice was different now, not panicked like it was with his lawyer. This was the voice of a bully, the voice of a man in control. "Who would he talk to, that old fool Marcus Reynolds? He thinks Marcus is just an old army buddy. He has no one." But what if he doesn't sign tomorrow?" Alicia pressed. "What if he wakes up and decides he wants to think about it? Your friends are not patient people, Greg. You said so yourself. We need that house." There was a long, cold pause. I leaned closer to the speaker. I could hear Greg take a slow, deep breath. "He will sign," Greg said, each word a chip of ice. "But what if he doesn't?" Alicia's voice was almost a shriek. "What then, Greg? All this risk, it's for nothing." "No," Greg said. His voice was suddenly calm, too calm. It was the calm of a snake. "It's not for nothing, because I have a plan B. I already told you I did." "What? What plan B? You never told me the details." "Because you're weak, Alicia. Because you don't have the stomach for what's necessary. But you will. When you're standing in that big, beautiful house free and clear, you'll thank me." "What is it, Greg?" she whispered. I held my breath. Marcus's hand was frozen on his coffee cup. "I talked to my doctor," Greg said. "The same fake doctor, Egan. The one who was supposed to witness the signing. I asked him, hypothetically, of course, what happens to an old man with a heart condition?" "A heart condition?" Alicia sounded confused. "Daddy's heart is fine," Dr. Peterson said. "Dr. Peterson is an idiot," Greg roared. "Everyone knows old people have weak hearts, and your father has been taking heart medication for his blood pressure for 20 years. Little white pills. He takes one every morning. You know that. You're the one who sorts his pill box for him every Sunday." A new horror dawned on me. She prepares my pills. Every week. "Greg," Alicia whispered. What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Greg said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that chilled me to my very soul, "that the doctor told me something very interesting. If a man that old, a man already on that medication, were to accidentally take, say, a double dose, or maybe a triple dose, what would happen? Silence. The ticking of their clock. Tick, tock. He would get dizzy," Greg continued as if he were explaining a recipe. "He'd feel weak. He'd sit down, and then his heart would just stop, peacefully, in his sleep. A heart attack at 76. It's the most normal thing in the world." My hand flew to my chest. My pills. My little white pills. "Greg," Alicia said. Her voice was unreadable. You're talking about..." "I'm talking about a backup plan," he hissed. "I'm talking about securing our future. Now I hope he signs tomorrow. I really do. It's clean. It's easy. But if he doesn't, if that old fool decides to be difficult, then it's good to know we have another option. A permanent one." The recording continued. I waited. I waited for my daughter to scream, to cry, to call the police. I waited for her to say, "You're a monster. Get out of my house." But all I heard was silence. A long, terrible, damning silence. She didn't protest. She didn't argue. She didn't gasp. After almost a minute, I heard her voice again. It was small, shaky, but it wasn't a no. And, the will?" she asked. "What about it?" Greg said. If he just dies, doesn't everything go to the granddaughter, to Imani?" I shut my eyes. She wasn't protesting the murder. She was worried about the inheritance. "Not if he's declared incompetent first," Greg said. "That's why the paperwork is so important. That's why we need that doctor. See, I've thought of everything. We're covered, baby, no matter what. Marcus clicked off the recorder. The room was silent. I looked at my hands. They were shaking. Not from fear, from a rage so profound I thought it would burn me alive. She was my daughter, my only child, and she had just listened to a plan to murder her father, and her only concern was making sure she still got the money. I stood up. Eli, Marcus started. He's right, I said. My voice was a stranger's. She is stupid, almost as stupid as her father, because she thinks I'm a tired old man. She thinks I'm weak. I turned to my friend. He didn't just try to steal from me, Mark. He didn't just try to frame my daughter. He's planning to kill me. I walked to the door. What's the move? Marcus asked, standing up. We call the police. We hand this over. No, I said. Not yet. They're too smart. They'll claim it was just talk. They'll get lawyers. They'll drag it out. No. This ends my way. I looked back at him, a feeling I hadn't felt in 50 years stirring in my chest. The feeling of a fight. They want to play. Fine. It's time to set the trap. I sat up straight in the leather chair. The anger was so cold, so pure, it felt like peace. There were no more doubts. There was no more sadness. They weren't just trying to rob me. They were planning to abandon my daughter, and they were planning to murder me. A heart attack. Quick, simple, and profitable. My own daughter had listened to the plan to end my life, and her only question was about the inheritance. I finally knew exactly what I was dealing with. All right, Mark, I said. My voice was steady. They want to play. Let's play. Marcus looked at me, his eyes dark. What's the move, Eli? We have the recordings. We call the police. We end this right now. I shook my head. No, not yet. They're too smart. They'll claim it was just talk. They'll say it was a hypothetical conversation. They'll get lawyers. They'll drag it out, and they'll paint me as the senile old man who forgot what he heard. I stood up. No, they want me to sign the papers. They want me to be weak and confused. They want me to be the frail old man who needs help. I looked back at my friend, a feeling I hadn't felt in 50 years stirring in my chest. The feeling of a fight. They've even got their own crooked lawyer, his mistress, ready to notarize it. It would be rude to disappoint them. I pulled out my phone, the simple, cheap phone I used for my teacher life. Mr. Harrison, the security chief, looked at me. The line is secure, Mr. Vance. We are recording everything. Good. I took a deep breath. I pictured Greg's greedy, desperate face. I pictured Alicia's weak, complicit silence. And I dialed Greg's number. I let the 76 years settle back onto my shoulders. I slumped. I made my breathing shallow and shaky. By the time he picked up, I was no longer Elias Vance, the founder of Vanguard. I was Eli, the confused old man on the verge of tears. Greg, I said, letting my voice crackle and tremble. Son, is that you? Dad. His voice was sharp, suspicious. He was probably still with Sarah, celebrating. What's wrong? Why are you calling me? I thought we were talking tomorrow. I let a small broken sob escape. I'm scared, Greg, I whispered. I'm scared. I did what you said. I tried to think about it, and my head, it hurts. I can't think straight anymore. I heard him move. He was suddenly paying attention. What do you mean, Dad? What's wrong? I think you were right, I stammered. I think I'm getting confused. I almost left the stove on again. I forgot Amani's name for a second. Greg, I'm losing my mind, aren't I? There was a pause. A beautiful, terrible pause. I could practically hear him tasting the victory. Oh, Dad, he said, his voice instantly switching. It was now thick with that fake, sticky sympathy. It's okay. It's not your fault. It's just your age. It's okay. Alicia and I are here. I know, son. I know. And those papers you sent. The email. Yes, he said, his voice tense. I looked at them. I don't understand the words, Greg. They're just jumbled. But you said they would protect me. You said... You said you would take care of everything. That's right, Dad. We will. You just need to trust us.
I do, I whispered. I trust you, Greg. I don't want to wait until tomorrow. I'm scared. I'm scared I'll wake up and I won't remember who I am. Can we just sign them tonight? Please get it over with. I heard him muffle the phone. I heard him whisper to Sarah. He's crumbling. He's begging to sign. Tonight. I heard her faint, sharp laugh. He came back on the line. His voice was triumphant. He was trying to hide it, but I could hear it. He was the wolf, and the sheep had just walked right up to him. Of course, Dad. Of course we can. Tonight is... Wait, not tonight. We can't get everything ready that fast. How about Friday? Friday. 2 days from now. Enough time for him to set his own stage. Friday, I asked, my voice weak. Okay, Friday. But, I said, adding the final piece of the trap. I want it to be official. I want people to see. I don't want anyone to say you tricked me. What do you mean?
Greg asked, suspicious again. I mean, can your lawyer be there, Sarah? The one you mentioned, and that doctor you were talking to. The one who could, help me. I want them to be witnesses, so everyone knows I'm doing this while I'm still lucid. This was the genius of it. I was inviting the co-conspirators. I was asking for the fake doctor and the crooked lawyer to be present. Greg was ecstatic. He was getting everything he wanted wrapped in a bow. Dad, that is the smartest idea you've had all day. Yes, I'll bring Sarah. I'll bring Dr. Egan. They can both witness the signature. It'll be perfectly legal. Airtight. Airtight. The same word Sarah had used.
Oh, thank you, son. Thank you. I whimpered. I feel so much better. I'll have Alicia cook. We'll make it a family dinner, a celebration of my retirement. That's a wonderful idea, Dad,
Greg said, his voice thick with fake emotion. A celebration, Friday at 7 p.m. We will be there, with the papers. You just rest. I will, son. I'll rest now. Thank you. I hung up the phone. The room was silent. I stood up straight. The trembling stopped. The weakness vanished. My voice when I spoke was no longer frail. It was iron. I looked at Marcus. He was grinning from ear to ear. A family dinner, I said. A celebration, Marcus replied, picking up his own phone. Mark, I said, the party starts Friday at 7 p.m. at my house, and I want you to invite the entire board of directors of Vanguard Strategies. Tell them it's an urgent mandatory meeting on corporate governance. The whole board, he asked, his eyes widening in delight. The whole board, I confirmed. And Harrison, I want you to call your friends at the Atlanta PD, the real ones, not just the mall cops. Tell them I'm expecting uninvited guests, including a fugitive from the SEC and a man practicing medicine without a license. Tell them to arrive at 7:30 and tell them to bring cuffs. The next 48 hours were the calmest I had felt in months. The decision was made. The trap was set. All that was left was to let the rats walk into it. I spent Thursday morning doing exactly what the senile old man was supposed to do. I worked in my garden. I trimmed my azaleas. My neighbor, Miss Davis, waved from her porch. You're looking spry today, Eli. Feeling good, Josephine, I called back. Just enjoying the sunshine. Greg and Alicia drove by twice. I saw their car, slowing down, watching me, checking to make sure the sheep was still in his pen, unaware of the slaughter planned for Friday. I gave them a weak, confused little wave. Greg sped off. While I was pruning roses, my real work was happening downtown. Marcus had convened an emergency meeting with the board. He'd played them the recordings, the ones of Greg and Alicia, the ones of Greg and his mistress, and the one where they planned my murder. The rage from our board members, 10 of the sharpest, most ruthless minds in the country, was a palpable thing. They weren't just angry that their founder was being targeted. They were insulted that Greg, a small-time 2-bit embezzler, thought he could get away with it. They approved every part of my plan. My next call was to Dr. Peterson, my real doctor. Pete, I said, I need you at my house, Friday, 7 p.m. Wear your best suit. Eli, what's going on? I've been worried since Alicia's visit. You were right to be worried, Pete, I said. They're coming to have me sign papers. They're bringing their own doctor to certify that I'm incompetent. There was a heavy silence. My God, Eli. That's criminal. Yes, I said. It is. And I need you there to be my witness. I need a real doctor in the room when the fake one starts his performance. I'll be there, Pete said, his voice hard. Count on it. Yes, my final call was the most important. I didn't call the local precinct. I called the chief of police for the Atlanta Police Department, Raymond Steele. Chief Steele, I said. Mr. Vance. He answered immediately. He knew my voice. Of course he did. I didn't need to explain why I could call the chief directly. Vanguard Strategies wasn't just a donor to the Atlanta Police Foundation. We were the foundation. We had funded their new training facility, their updated computer systems, and most importantly, their entire pension fund. When I called, the chief listened. I have a delicate situation at my home, Chief. Friday night. It involves fraud, conspiracy, and a potential threat to my life. Say no more, Mr. Vance, he replied. You'll have my best. How do you want to play it? I need 2 of your sharpest officers from the white-collar crime unit. I don't want uniforms. I don't want sirens. I want them in expensive suits. I want them to look like my associates. They're to arrive at 7:15. They are to observe, and they are not to act until I give the signal. The signal. I'll say, I believe we've covered all the legalities. When you hear that, they can make the arrests. Consider it done, Eli. Be safe. I hung up. The pieces were in place. The police, the doctor, the board. Now for the most important piece. I called my granddaughter, Imani. Hey, baby girl, I said, my voice warm again. Are you still my #1 detective? Yes, Grandpa, she whispered, probably from her room. Did they come back? They're coming back, Angel, on Friday for a celebration dinner, and I need your help. Can you come over Friday at 6 before they get here, and can you bring your tablet? The one you got me for Christmas. That's the one, I said. The tablet was a high-end secure device linked directly to Vanguard servers. We're going to play that math game you love so much, the one about profit and loss. I'll be there, Grandpa. I'll tell Mom I want to help you cook. You're a genius, Imani, just like your grandmother. The last step was Mr. Harrison's team. They arrived at my house at 3 a.m. on Friday morning while the world was dark. They were ghosts. They installed 5 micro cameras in my living room, 1 in the ceiling light, 1 in a bookshelf, 1 in the grandfather clock, 1 in a fake smoke detector, and 1 in a picture frame of Rosalind. They were high definition. They were audio enabled, and they were streaming directly to a secure server. When they finished, I was alone in my house again. I walked into my closet. I pushed past the flannel shirts. I pulled out the $5,000 custom-made Brioni suit, charcoal gray. I laid it on the bed. I was 76 years old, and I was about to host the most important dinner of my life. I was going to let my son-in-law and my own daughter walk into my home and try to destroy me. I was going to let them hand me the pen. I looked at the suit. I thought about Greg in his cheap, flashy clothes, thinking he was the smartest man in the room. I smiled. He wanted a celebration. I was going to give him one he would never forget. Friday night, 7 p.m. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I had sent Imani to her room. Don't come out until you hear me call your name, Angel, I'd told her. No matter what you hear, Grandpa is just having a serious talk with your parents. She had nodded, her big eyes serious. She knew. Children always know. I was wearing the $5,000 Brioni suit, charcoal gray. But on top I had pulled on my old stained wool cardigan, the one with the torn leather patches on the elbows, the one Alicia was always trying to throw away. It was the perfect sheep's clothing. My friends had arrived at 6. They hadn't come through the front door. They'd used the back entrance one by one like shadows. The entire board of directors of Vanguard Strategies. My chief legal counsel, David. My real doctor, Pete Peterson. And, of course, Marcus Reynolds. They were scattered around my living room. They weren't talking. They weren't drinking the expensive scotch I'd set out. They were just waiting. They looked like a silent, expensive jury. They were here to witness a slaughter. 7:02 p.m. The doorbell rang. They were 2 minutes late, probably giving themselves a final pep talk in the car. Remember, act worried. He's an old fool. This will be easy. I took a slow breath. I shuffled to the door, forcing the stiffness of age into my knees. I put the tremble back into my hand as I reached for the knob. I opened it. There they were, the unholy trinity. No, the unholy four. Greg was in the front. He had on a shiny new suit, trying to look the part of a successful executive. He was holding that thick folder of papers like it was a winning trophy. Beside him, Alicia, my daughter. She looked pale, nervous. She was wearing too much makeup. She looked like a child playing dress-up in her mother's clothes. And behind them, the professionals, Sarah Klein, the mistress lawyer, clutching her own briefcase, her eyes cold and assessing, and Dr. Egan, a man I already knew from Marcus's report, had his medical license revoked in 3 states. They were all smiling, the hungry, terrible smiles of predators who had finally cornered their prey. "Dad," Greg said, his voice booming with fake, cheerful energy. "Ready for the big night, we brought everything." "Come in, son, come in," I mumbled, stepping back, keeping my eyes low. They stepped into the entryway, and then they stopped. Dead. I wish I had a camera for that moment. I wish I could have framed the look on Greg's face. The smug, triumphant smile didn't just fade, it shattered. It was like watching a bucket of ice water hit him in the face. His eyes went wide, his mouth opened, but nothing came out. My living room was not empty. It was full. 20 men and women, all dressed in immaculate, dark, expensive suits. They weren't talking. They weren't mingling. They were just standing or sitting in my humble living room staring at him. Marcus Reynolds was by the fireplace, one arm resting on the mantel, looking at Greg with a look of absolute pure contempt. The 2 armed police officers in their sharpest suits stood near the kitchen entrance. They looked like high-powered executives, and they were blocking the only other exit. Alicia was the first to find her voice. It was a high-pitched squeak. "Daddy, who are all these people? Is this another party?" Greg finally found his. It was a strangled whisper. "Dad, what is this? Who are all these people?" He looked around wildly. He was a broker. He knew these faces. He might not have known me, but he knew them. I saw him recognize 2 of the board members from Vanguard. I saw him recognize the head of the Atlanta Bar Association. I saw him recognize Dr. Peterson. His face went from pale to a sickly shade of green. I shuffled forward. I played the part of the confused, frail old man to perfection. I gave a weak little laugh. "Oh, these are just some old friends, son. From my teaching days, you know. My chess club." I saw the look Greg shot at Sarah. Chess club. These people. They knew I was lying, but they didn't know why. I've been thinking, I continued, my voice trembling just right. "I'm signing such important papers tonight, Greg. You said so yourself. And I wanted to make sure I had witnesses." I leaned in as if sharing a secret with him. "You know, so it's all legal. So that after, no one can come and say, you know, that you tricked the confused old man." I smiled a vacant, senile smile. "I'm protecting you, son. I don't want any legal mistakes." I saw the blood drain from Greg's face. And then I saw it return. He was trapped. He looked at the room full of powerhouse lawyers and executives. He looked at the papers in his hand. He looked at me, the foolish old man who had just invited a room full of legal witnesses to his own execution. And then I saw it, the flicker in his eyes. He and Sarah, his mistress, exchanged a single tiny glance. I could read their minds. It's weird. It's a risk. But he's inviting witnesses. He's doing it in front of a room full of people. He's validating the signature. It actually makes it stronger. He's too stupid to realize he's making our case for us. The greed was stronger than the fear. The desperation to get those papers signed tonight before his loan sharks came overruled his survival instinct. He forced his smile back on. It was a terrible, strained grimace like a mask of plastic. "Dad, that's a brilliant idea. Of course, the more the merrier. Right, Sarah?" Sarah Klein, the crooked lawyer, adjusted her glasses. Her eyes swept the room, and I could see the arrogance returning. She thought she was the smartest person here. "Perfectly prudent, Mr. Vance. she said, her voice smooth as oil. Good, Greg said. He patted his folder. He was back in control, or so he thought. Well, let's get started, shall we? Dr. Egan needs to ask you a few questions first. Just a formality. He walked forward. He walked deeper into the trap. Alicia followed him, her eyes wide still, not understanding what was happening. And I just smiled. Yes, I thought. Let's begin. Greg settled back into his chair. He was the king of my living room. He actually motioned to the man who had come in with him, the one I knew was the fake doctor. All right, Dr. Egan, Greg said, his voice full of false concern. Before we sign anything, I just want my father-in-law to feel comfortable. Could you, just talk to him, reassure him that this is the right step? Dr. Egan stepped forward. He was a weaselly man in a suit that was too large for him. He had a fake smile and dead eyes. He was holding a clipboard, the universal symbol of false authority. I slumped in my chair. I let my head loll to the side. I made my breathing shallow, my eyes vacant. I was the very picture of a confused, senile old man. Mr. Vance, Egan said, his voice loud as if he were talking to a deaf child. Mr. Vance, can you hear me? I blinked slowly. Yes, who are you? Greg sighed dramatically for the benefit of the witnesses. See, he's confused. Egan smiled. It's all right, Mr. Vance. I'm Dr. Egan. Your family called me. They're very worried about you. He didn't get a stethoscope. He didn't check my pulse. He just stood over me and read from his clipboard. Mr. Vance, he said, your daughter Alicia tells me you've been forgetting things. Is that true? I looked at Alicia. She was twisting her hands, refusing to meet my gaze. I don't know, I mumbled. Sometimes. Everyone forgets things. But you've been forgetting names, haven't you? Egan pressed. Your daughter says you forgot her name last week. A lie. A monstrous lie. And you've been leaving the stove on, putting yourself in danger. I have an induction stove, I whispered, but my voice was so weak no one could hear. Egan nodded, making a note. Yes, and you've been getting lost on your walks, wandering. A neighbor had to bring you home. No, I said a bit stronger. No, I like to walk. Egan ignored me. He turned to Greg as if I wasn't even in the room. He spoke to him like a consultant delivering a report. Yes, Mr. Miller, it's just as we discussed. He lowered his voice to a professional, somber tone, but loud enough for the entire room to hear. Based on the family's extensive reports and my own observations here, it's clear. Mr. Vance is clearly exhibiting classic signs of early-onset Alzheimer's. The confusion, the memory loss, the denial, it's all textbook. He looked at me with a sickening, pitying smile. He is frankly a danger to himself. He is no longer in a position to manage his own affairs. This power of attorney, he tapped Greg's folder, is not just a good idea, it is a medical necessity. The room was silent. Greg was beaming. He had his medical validation. In front of 20 witnesses. He had won. He picked up the pen. Thank you, Doctor. We're so grateful for your clarity. Dad, you hear that this is to help you. Now. He was about to hand me the pen. That's fascinating, Dr. Egan. The voice came from the corner. It was calm. It was sharp. It cut through the room like a surgeon's scalpel. Greg froze. His hand was hovering over the table. What? Who said that? A man stood up. A man Greg and his crew had never seen before. A well-dressed black man in his 60s holding a slim leather folder. I said, the man repeated, walking calmly into the center of the room, that your diagnosis is fascinating. Egan, the fake doctor, looked confused. And you are... the man said, stopping right in front of him, am Dr. Peterson, and I've been Elias Vance's actual physician for 30 years. You could have heard a pin drop. Alicia let out a small, strangled gasp. Greg's face went from triumph to a chalky, grayish white. Sarah Klein, the lawyer, stopped smiling. Pete Peterson. My old friend turned to look at the room full of board members. Good evening, everyone. Forgive the interruption. But I heard Dr. Egan's diagnosis, and I felt I had to clear up a few factual errors. He looked back at Egan. Egan was starting to sweat. You see, Pete continued, I find your early-onset Alzheimer's diagnosis to be remarkable, especially since I'm holding Mr. Vance's full medical chart from his executive physical, which we conducted last week. And he opened his folder. According to real tests, not family reports, Mr. Vance's heart is as strong as a man of 50. His blood pressure is perfect, and his cognitive battery, well, he scored in the 98th percentile. He's sharper than my residents. Pete smiled a cold, hard smile. In short, he is in perfect mental and physical health. So, Dr. Egan, I have to ask, what reports were you using? And what, exactly, is your field of medicine? Egan was ghost white. He was looking at Greg. He was looking at the door. This is a misunderstanding. I was asked for an opinion. A medical opinion, Pete pressed. That's interesting because my colleague here, he gestured to one of the board members who happened to be the head of the Georgia Medical Board, ran your name, Dr. Egan. It seems you lost your license in California for selling prescriptions, and in New York for, what was it? Oh, yes, medical fraud. And you currently have no license to practice medicine in the state of Georgia. Egan looked like he was going to be sick. This is entrapment. I need my lawyer. Oh, I think you do, I said. I was no longer the frail old man. I stood up straight. I pulled off the old stained cardigan and dropped it on the floor, revealing the $5,000 suit underneath. Alicia's eyes widened in horror. Greg looked from me to the suit and back to me, his brain finally understanding that something was terribly wrong. Before Egan could take a step, the two men by the kitchen door moved, the ones Greg thought were my chess buddies. One of them flipped open his jacket, revealing the badge on his belt. Dr. Egan, the officer said, his voice bored. I think you've said quite enough. You should probably remain silent. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and practicing medicine without a license. Egan stumbled back, his hands up. It was him, he shrieked, pointing at Greg. He paid me. He paid me $5,000 to say it. It was all his idea. The second officer was already cuffing him. You can tell us all about it downtown. They started walking him to the door. Greg was frozen. Alicia was hyperventilating. And as the officer passed me, he paused. Mr. Vance, that was one hell of a performance. We're just getting started, Detective, I replied. The click of the handcuffs on Dr. Egan's wrists was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It echoed in my living room, sharp and final. Alicia let out a small, strangled sound like an animal caught in a trap. She stumbled backward, her hand flying to her mouth. She was staring at the officers, then at me, then at the man being led out of her father's house in disgrace. She was finally truly panicking. Greg was frozen. He looked like a statue. His eyes were wide, darting from the cuffed Egan to Dr. Peterson, his brain failing to compute what was happening. He had planned for a confused old man. He had planned for a weak daughter. He had not planned for a room full of powerful witnesses. He had not planned for a real doctor. The officers were pushing the doctor toward the door. Egan was blubbering now. It was him. He paid me $5,000. It was all his idea. He said the old man was senile. Save it for your statement, sir, the detective said, shoving him out into the night. The door closed and the room was silent again. But it was a new kind of silence. It was the silence of a bomb having just gone off, and then the second bomb. Stop this. This is ridiculous. It was Sarah Klein, the mistress, the crooked lawyer. While everyone else was stunned, she was regrouping. She was a predator. She stepped forward, adjusting her expensive glasses. Her voice was cold, sharp, and full of authority. Officers, you are making a grave mistake, she snapped. She turned to Dr. Peterson. And you, sir, have just committed a flagrant violation of patient confidentiality. I hope you have a good lawyer. She then turned to the entire room, to my friends, to my board of directors. Her voice was commanding. This is a private family matter. Our client, Mr. Vance, she gestured toward me, is clearly unwell. He is confused. He is being manipulated by these people. She pointed at Marcus. We were here at his own request to help him manage his affairs. She looked directly at me, her eyes filled with a cold, manufactured pity. Elias, don't you see what's happening? These people are trying to take advantage of you in your confused state. She was good. She was very, very good. She was trying to flip the script, to paint me as the senile old man and them as the victims. She was trying to make my board of directors, the men and women I had worked with for 50 years, believe that they were the ones committing the fraud. She looked at the officers. I am Mr. Vance's acting legal counsel as of tonight, and I am ordering you to leave his property. That's a very interesting legal position, Ms. Klein. The voice came from the fireplace. It was Marcus Reynolds. He hadn't moved this entire time. He just stood there, one arm resting on the mantel, a glass of untouched scotch in his hand. He now slowly, deliberately set the glass down. "And who are you?" Sarah snapped, turning to face him. Marcus smiled. It was not a nice smile. "I," he said, "am Marcus Reynolds. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Vanguard Strategies." He looked at me, a quick, warm glance. "But more importantly, I am Mr. Vance's partner, his business partner, for 50 years. He took a step forward. "And our legal team, the real one." "Well, we find you fascinating, Sarah." Sarah Klein's face, which had been so confident, so arrogant, went completely blank. It was the first time she had shown a real emotion. It was fear. She knew that name. Vanguard Strategies. She knew who he was. "You are Sarah Klein." Marcus continued, his voice soft, conversational, like a professor dissecting an insect. "Attorney at law, you just identified yourself as Mr. Vance's acting counsel, but we know you as Greg Miller's primary attorney." Sarah held her ground. "A man can have 2 lawyers. This is irregular but not illegal. You are harassing us." "Oh, it gets illegal, Sarah," Marcus said. He picked up a tablet from the side table, the one Mr. Harrison had been holding. "You see, our team was very interested in your work, so we did a little digging, especially into your side business. A little shell company, a company called Klein Investments, registered in Delaware." I watched her. I saw the tiny muscle in her jaw jump. She knew. She was caught. "Does that name sound familiar?" Marcus asked. He didn't wait for an answer. He swiped the tablet. "It should. It's the same company Greg Miller here has been funneling his client's retirement money into. The same one he used to embezzle $1.2 million. Alicia let out a sound. A high, thin scream that was choked off in her throat. 1 million. Greg looked at Sarah. His face was a mask of terror. The game was over. You can't prove that," Sarah stammered. "We don't have to," Marcus said. "The SEC can. And our security chief, Mr. Harrison, has already sent them this entire file, including," and he smiled, "the recording of your conversation with your client and your lover this afternoon, the one where you plan to abandon his wife and flee to Costa Rica." Alicia's head snapped toward Greg. The look on her face. It wasn't just shock. It was a complete shattering psychic break. Lover. Costa Rica. Sarah was completely still. She looked at Greg. Greg looked at her. The entire filthy, tangled lie was exposed. The second police officer, who had been waiting patiently by the door, stepped up to her. He was no longer playing the part of a chess buddy. He was all business. "Ms. Sarah Klein," he said, his voice flat. "I believe you do need a lawyer. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, and racketeering." She didn't even resist. She didn't say a word as the cuffs clicked onto her expensive wrists. Her arrogance was gone. All that was left was the hollow core of her greed. She was led out the door right past Alicia. Greg was now alone. He was standing in the middle of my living room, flanked by my board of directors, my real doctor, and 2 police officers. His fake doctor was gone. His crooked lawyer was gone. He looked at me. His eyes were no longer just angry. They were the eyes of a trapped animal, the eyes of a rat that knows there is no way out of the cage. The room was completely silent. The only sound was the front door clicking shut as the detective led Sarah Klein away. Greg stood alone in the middle of my living room. He was breathing hard, his chest hitching. He looked like a man who had just run a marathon only to find a brick wall at the finish line. He was trapped. His fake doctor was gone. His crooked lawyer and mistress was gone. He looked at me. He looked at Marcus. He looked at the stern, unimpressed faces of my board of directors. He looked at the remaining police officer who was standing by the door just watching him. And then he looked at my daughter. Alicia was backed against the wall next to the grandfather clock. She was white as a sheet, her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She was finally seeing the monster she had married. Greg's terror, that cold, paralytic fear. It suddenly vanished. It was replaced by something else. Something hotter. Pure, cornered rat rage. "You..." The word wasn't spoken. It was roared. He lunged, not physically, but with every ounce of his voice, pointing a shaking finger directly at my daughter. "This is your fault." Alicia flinched as if he had slapped her. "What, Greg? No. Shut up," he screamed. "This is all on you. You with your endless crying. Oh, Greg, we're so broke. Oh, Greg, my father is just sitting on that house and he's so confused he doesn't even know what he's doing." He was mimicking her voice, his own twisted into a high mocking whine. "You're the one," he shouted, taking a step toward her. The officer by the door tensed but didn't move. "You're the one who told me he was a senile old fool. You're the one who went to his doctor trying to get him put away. You told me all he had was this stupid house." He swept his arm around, gesturing wildly at my humble living room. You said this was it, a stupid, worthless house in a dead-end neighborhood. You said he was a broke old teacher with a pension. You're the one who manipulated me." It was a masterful performance of a desperate man. He was trying to paint himself as the victim. The well-meaning husband led astray by a greedy, manipulative wife. He was trying to throw my daughter to the wolves to save himself.
Greg, no.
Alicia was sobbing now, a terrible guttural sound.
I thought he was confused. I didn't know.
You didn't know. Greg laughed. It was a horrible, broken sound. You knew. You knew exactly what we were doing. You just didn't have the guts to do it yourself. You needed me. You needed me to be the bad guy while you played the poor, worried daughter. You were fine with it all as long as you got the money. That's not true, she shrieked. I love my father. You love his house, Greg roared back. You were fine with him being locked up. You were fine with him being taken care of. You just... He stopped. His mind was racing. He was looking for one more branch to grab as he fell, and then he found it. He stopped looking at Alicia. He slowly turned his head. His eyes, filled with a new, wild, insane kind of triumph, locked onto me. He started to laugh. It wasn't a small laugh. It was a loud, booming, maniacal laugh that filled the room. It was the laugh of a man who had lost everything and had nothing left to lose. "And you," he said, his voice dropping but still shaking with laughter. You old bastard. You think you've won." I stood still, my hands clasped behind my back. I just watched him. "You think this was all about a house," he spat. "You think I'm that stupid. You think I wouldn't do my own homework." He looked around the room at the board of directors, at the lawyers. His eyes were shining with a feverish light. "You think I didn't wonder why a broke old teacher had so many important friends?" He took a step toward me. "I know who you are. I figured it out. Weeks ago." Alicia stopped crying. She looked up, her face a mask of confusion. "Greg, what are you talking about?" He ignored her. His eyes were locked on me. "You're not just a teacher. You're not just some senile old man." He then did something I wasn't expecting. He raised his shaking finger and pointed it not at me but straight at Marcus Reynolds, who was still standing by the fireplace. "Vanguard!" Greg shouted the name like a curse. "Vanguard Strategies. I saw your name on his old army papers. I thought he was just a friend." He turned back to me, his face triumphant. "But I investigated. I know who he is. He's the CEO, and I know who you are. You're a founder. You're not broke. You're... He was vibrating with the revelation. He thought he was dropping a bomb that would destroy me. He thought he was exposing me as a liar in front of my friends. "I know you have shares," he screamed. "I know you're rich. You've been lying to us, to everyone. This whole life is a lie." The room was dead silent. He had played his last desperate card. He thought he had exposed my secret. He had no idea. He had just confirmed in front of 2 police officers and my entire legal team that his entire scheme was built on a foundation of calculated corporate-level greed. He hadn't just been trying to steal from a confused old man. He had been trying to steal from a lion. He stood there panting, victorious. He thought he had just played his trump card. He thought he had just exposed me. "I know you have shares," he screamed again, his voice cracking. "I found the old incorporation papers. Vance Thomas Strategies. Your Vance." He took a step toward me, his face twisted in a sneer. And you know what? This doesn't even change anything. It makes it better. It just proves my point. You're senile. A confused old man sitting on millions. You're sitting on a fortune and you let your own daughter, my wife, struggle. Alicia looked up, her tear-streaked face a mask of utter confusion. Millions? Greg, what? Shut up, Alicia, he snapped. He didn't even look at her. His eyes were locked on me, blazing with a terrifying, greedy fire. I did my research, old man. I know you have 5% of that company. 5%. Do you even know what that's worth? Do you, you old fool? He was shaking now. He wasn't just angry. He was ecstatic. He was a small-time thief who had just realized the wallet he'd stolen didn't just have $20 in it. He thought it had 20,000. He didn't know he was off by a factor of 10,000. That's why you need me, he shouted, tapping his chest. That's why you need this power of attorney. You're incompetent. You're sitting on a gold mine and you're letting it rot. You don't deserve it. You're too lamb-cam to manage it. I'm going to optimize it for you. I'm going to optimize that 5%. The room was dead silent. I just looked at him. I let him talk. I let him dig his own grave deeper and deeper with every single word. I let him confess in front of 2 police officers and my entire legal team that his entire motive, his entire conspiracy, was built on the deliberate, calculated theft of my corporate assets. He had just admitted to everything. I didn't smile. I didn't move. I just waited. He was panting, his chest heaving. He looked around the room expecting, what? For my friends to suddenly agree with him, for them to nod and say, yes, this senile old man should give you his money. 5%, he muttered again as if tasting it. 5%. We can finally. And then a sound broke the silence. It was a laugh. It wasn't my laugh. It was from the fireplace. Marcus Reynolds, my partner, my CEO, the man who had stood there like a stone statue. He threw his head back and laughed. It wasn't a small chuckle. It was a deep, booming belly laugh that echoed off the walls of my small living room. Greg's triumphant expression faltered. What? What's so funny? Shut up. Marcus wiped a tear from his eye. He was still smiling. He looked at Greg. He looked at him the way a giant might look at a yapping dog. 5%, Marcus said, his voice rich with amusement. Son, you really didn't do your homework, did you? Greg frowned. What? What are you talking about? I saw the papers. Vance Thomas. He's Vance. 5%. It's standard for an old-timer founder. Oh, you're right, Marcus said, taking a step forward. Vanguard does set aside 5% of its shares for its founding partners. He then tapped his own chest. 5% is my share. The share I was given for coming on as CEO. He let that sink in. Greg's face went from confusion to a dawning, terrible, sickening dread. He didn't understand. He couldn't. I don't, Greg stammered. You're right, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. I am Elias Vance. I am the Vance in Vanguard Strategies. I looked at my daughter, who was staring at me as if she had never seen me before. Alicia, you always thought I was just a teacher. That was true. But before that, before you were born, before I met your mother, I was a statistician, a man who loved numbers more than people. I looked at Greg. I'm the man who wrote the algorithm, the one Vanguard Strategies is built on, the predictive model that made us. I turned back to Marcus. Tell him, Mark. Tell him just how lamb-cam I am. Marcus smiled. 5% is my share, son, the share I got for running the company for 40 years. He pointed a long, steady finger at me. Eli, Mr. Vance, he owns 60%. The silence that followed was not silence. It was a vacuum. It sucked all the air, all the sound, all the life out of the room. 60, Greg whispered. His face was no longer pale. It was the color of wet cement. 60%, Marcus confirmed. Not of a small company, of a $200 million fund. That's what, Eli? My math's a little rusty. $120 million. Alicia made a sound, a high, thin whistling sound. She slid down the wall and crumpled onto the floor in a dead faint. But no one moved to help her. All eyes were on Greg. He was shaking his head, slowly, back and forth. No, 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 no. He looked at me. His eyes were no longer angry or greedy. They were broken. He wasn't a wolf anymore. He was just a fool. A man who had gambled his entire life, his wife's family, his freedom, all on the assumption that he was the smartest person in the room. And in one single sentence, he had just learned that he was by far the dumbest. He had tried to con a man for a house who could have bought and sold his entire city block with the interest he made in a single day. He had tried to steal my assets. He didn't realize I was the asset. 60%, he whispered again. He looked at the useless papers in his hand. The power of attorney. The quitclaim deed for my little $300,000 house. He finally understood. Greg stood there utterly broken. The word 60 hung in the air, a final judgment that had destroyed his entire world. He was shaking his head, just whispering, no, no, no. He was a man who had bet everything on a single hand, only to find out the man across the table owned the entire casino. Alicia was still on the floor where she had fainted. She was starting to stir, her eyelids fluttering. She had fainted when she heard the number 120 million. She had fainted knowing her entire marriage was a lie. She pushed herself up on one elbow. Her hair was a mess. Her makeup was ruined. She looked at Greg, but he wasn't looking at her. He was staring at me, his eyes completely vacant. Greg, Alicia whispered. Her voice was thin, reedy. Greg, what are they saying? 60%? That's not true, right? She looked at me, her eyes desperate for me to deny it. Desperate for me to go back to being the confused old man she could manage, the father she could pity and betray. He's lying, right, Daddy? She pleaded. Tell him he's lying. I just looked at her. I didn't say a word. I let the truth sit on her. I let it crush her. She turned back to Greg, who was still just shaking his head, muttering. The reality of what he had done, of who I was crashing down on him. And then Alicia's confusion, it started to turn into something else. The recording of Greg and Sarah, the baby, the stupid, Alicia, our ticket, Costa Rica. It was all coming back to her, connecting with the revelation of my wealth. Her face, which had been pale with shock, slowly turned red. A deep, blotchy, ugly red. She wasn't just shocked anymore. She was humiliated. She struggled to her feet. You, she whispered, her voice trembling with a new kind of rage. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Greg. You lied to me. Greg didn't even register her. He was in his own private hell. You told me he was poor, she shrieked, taking a step toward him. You told me he was a confused old man. You told me it was just this house. You said we were helping him. You said you were protecting him from himself. She hit his chest with her open palms. You used me. You used me to try and steal from my own father. It was almost believable. She was playing the victim, the poor, deceived wife. She was trying to get back on my side, trying to get back on the side with the $120 million. She turned to me, her eyes wide, flooding with tears. Daddy, I didn't know, I swear. I didn't know. He told me you were sick. He told me you were in danger. I was just trying to help you. I love you. I promise I love you. She was running toward me, her arms outstretched. I raised one hand. Stop! My voice wasn't loud, but it was cold. It cut through her fake sobs and stopped her dead in her tracks. She froze, her hand still reaching for me. I looked at her, my daughter, the architect of my ruin. He didn't just lie to you, Alicia, I said, my voice flat. He didn't just lie to you about my money. He lied to you about everything. She frowned. What do you mean? You're right, I said. He did have a plan for me. A plan in case I didn't sign these papers. A plan B. I saw Greg's head snap up. His vacant eyes were suddenly sharp again. He was terrified. He knew what was coming. "Alicia," I said, looking at my daughter, "your husband wasn't just planning to rob me. He was planning to kill me." Alicia just stared. She shook her head. No, you're lying. You're trying to turn me against him. He wouldn't... Greg, he wouldn't... Wouldn't he? I asked. Are you sure? Are you sure about the man you married? The man who was going to abandon you in a mountain of debt and flee the country with his mistress? Mistress, she whispered. I don't have to tell you, I said. Why don't you listen for yourself? I turned to the corner of the room where my 10-year-old granddaughter Imani had been standing by the door watching everything unseen. Imani, I called out, my voice strong. Come here, baby girl. Imani walked out holding her tablet. She didn't look at her mother. She didn't look at her father. She just walked straight to me. You remember that math game I taught you? I asked her. The one about profit and loss. The one about consequences. Yes, Grandpa, she said, her voice clear and strong. I think it's time to play the final round, I said. Play Grandpa's little talk. Imani nodded. She pressed play on her tablet, and from the high-end speakers hidden in my ceiling, the ones I had installed for my classical music, their voices filled the room. Her voice, Alicia's voice. But what if he doesn't sign? What if he wakes up and decides he wants to think about it? I watched my daughter's face. The color drained from it. She knew this conversation. She knew what was coming next. And then, his voice, Greg's voice, the calm, snake-like whisper I would hear in my nightmares for the rest of my life. Greg's voice. He will sign. Alicia's voice. But what if he doesn't? Greg's voice. No, it's not for nothing. Because I have a plan B. I already told you I did. I talked to my doctor. I asked him, hypothetically of course, what happens to an old man with a heart condition? The board members were leaning forward. The police officers were watching their faces hard. Marcus was just staring at Alicia. Greg's voice. Your father has been taking heart medication for his blood pressure for 20 years. Little white pills. You're the one who sorts his pill box for him every Sunday. I saw Alicia's hands fly to her stomach. Greg's voice. I'm saying that the doctor told me something very interesting. If a man that old were to accidentally take, say, a double dose, or maybe a triple dose, what would happen? Greg's voice. He would get dizzy. He'd sit down, and then his heart would just stop. Peacefully. In his sleep. A heart attack at 76. It's the most normal thing in the world. The recording played on. The room was a tomb. Alicia's voice. And the will. Greg's voice. What about it? Alicia's voice. If he just dies. Doesn't everything go to the granddaughter? To Imani? Imani, standing next to me, didn't even flinch. She just stared at her mother. Greg's voice. Not if he's declared incompetent first. See, I've thought of everything. We're covered, baby, no matter what. The recording stopped. Silence. Alicia was shaking. Her whole body was vibrating. She turned her head slowly like a clockwork doll to look at her husband. Greg wasn't even looking at her. He was staring at the floor. He was finished. She looked at him. She looked at the man she had married, the man she had children with, the man she had agreed to rob her father for. And then she screamed. It wasn't a word. It was a sound of pure primal horror, a sound of a soul ripping in two. She backed away from him, stumbling until she hit the far wall. You! She shrieked, her voice cracking. You were going to kill my father! Alicia's scream echoed in the room. You were going to kill my father! Greg, who had been staring at the floor, finally snapped. His head whipped up. His eyes were no longer vacant. They were blazing with the fury of a cornered animal. So what? He roared at her. He was going to die anyway. He's old. That's what old people do. I was just speeding things up for us, for our family. Our family. Alicia was sobbing, sliding down the wall. You You monster! Don't you call me a monster, Greg shouted, taking a step toward her. That's enough, Mr. Miller. The detective's voice was calm, but it held the weight of the law. He stepped between Greg and my daughter. The second officer was right behind him, his hand resting lightly on his sidearm. Greg spun around, finally realizing the trap wasn't just metaphorical. The walls were literally closing in. You can't arrest me, he yelled. This is my house. Or it was going to be you. You have no right. This is a family matter. The detective didn't even smile. He just pulled the handcuffs from his belt. The small click as he unlatched them was deafening. Mr. Gregory Miller, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. As the detective reached for his arm, Greg finally broke. He didn't just resist, he exploded. No! He gurgled, yanking his arm back. Get off me! He tried to lunge, not for the door, but for me. You did this. He never made it a single step. The second officer moved faster than I thought a man that big could move. He had Greg's arm twisted behind his back and slammed him face first onto my coffee table before Greg could even blink. The thick folder of fraudulent papers went scattering across the floor. You old bastard! Greg screamed, his voice muffled by the wood. You monster! Alicia screamed. Imani ran and hid behind Marcus's legs. The board members just watched, their faces grim. You're a monster! Greg roared again, fighting against the officer's grip as they pulled his hands behind him and the cuffs clicked shut. You have all this money, and you let us struggle, you let us drown. They hauled him to his feet. His expensive suit was torn. His face was red. Spittle was flying from his mouth. His eyes were wild, filled with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful in its honesty. You let me think you were a poor, senile old man. He shrieked, his voice cracking. You watched me humiliate myself. You watched me beg, you trapped me. You set me up. He was completely unhinged. He had lost. He knew it. And all that was left was his pathetic, impotent rage. They started to drag him toward the door. He was still fighting, still screaming at me. You're the criminal, old man. You're the one who lied. I held up my hand. Wait. The officers stopped. They looked at me. Greg stopped struggling. He just hung there between them, panting, glaring at me with those hate-filled eyes. I walked toward him, slowly. I wasn't the frail old man anymore. I wasn't the history teacher. I was Elias Vance, founder of Vanguard Strategies, and this thing was in my house. I stopped just a few feet from him. I looked him dead in the eye. I didn't lie, Greg, I said. My voice was quiet, but it carried across the entire silent room. I just didn't tell you. There's a difference. What? What difference? He spat. I didn't pretend to be poor, I said. I am a simple man. I like my old truck. I like this house. It's where I raised my daughter. It's where my wife died. These are my roots, Greg. Something you wouldn't understand because you have none. I don't need roots, he sneered. I need cash. And you had it. You had hundreds of millions, and you let her worry about a $2,000 credit card bill. Yes, I said. I did. Because I gave my daughter everything. I gave her a good education. I gave her a trust fund. She doesn't even know about one that kicks in on her 45th birthday, one that you thank God will never touch. I gave her every advantage in the world, and I gave her the one thing my money couldn't protect her from: free will. I looked at him, and for the first time I let my own anger show. I gave her the right to make her own choices, and she chose you. She chose a weak, greedy, spineless con man. She chose to believe you when you told her I was senile. She chose to believe you when you said you needed help. I did need help, he yelled. You didn't need help, I said, my voice like steel. You needed a victim. And you were so blinded by your own arrogance, so convinced that old means stupid, that you never once stopped to ask who you were trying to con. I leaned in closer. You didn't just try to steal my money, son. You tried to steal my name. You tried to steal my mind. You and my daughter, you conspired to have me declared legally incompetent. You tried to take away the last thing I have left in this world that matters. What? He whispered. Your money. My dignity, I said. You were going to lock me in a room and tell the world I was a vegetable. All so you could pay your gambling debts and run off to Costa Rica with your mistress. You didn't just try to rob me. You tried to erase me. I looked at him for a long final moment. You're right about one thing, Greg. I did trap you. I let you walk into my house. I let you bring your fake doctor and your crooked lawyer. I let you believe you were winning, because that was the only way to make you show my daughter and the entire world exactly what kind of monster you are. I straightened my suit jacket. That is the one thing I will never, ever forgive. Greg just stared at me. The fight was gone. He was empty. I nodded to the detective. Get him out of my house. The officers didn't wait. They dragged him out the front door. We all heard him screaming all the way down the walkway until they forced him into the back of the police car. The front door closed. The house was silent again. Marcus let out a long breath. Dr. Peterson sat down looking exhausted. The board members just stood there shaking their heads. And then I heard it. A sound from the floor by the wall. Alicia, my daughter. She was huddled in a ball, her head on her knees, crying. Not the fake sobs of a manipulator. They were the raw, agonizing, broken sobs of a child who had just understood everything all at once. She had lost her husband. She had lost her father. And she had lost herself. The war was over. The trap had worked. But as I looked at what was left of my daughter, I realized I hadn't won a single thing. The house was loud, and then it was quiet. It was the loudest silence I had ever known. The sound of Greg screaming, "You trapped me!" still echoed in the entryway. The slam of the front door as the officers hauled him out felt final. My board of directors, my chess buddies, all stood up. They were good men, powerful men. They looked at me with a grim, respectful understanding. Marcus clapped me on the shoulder, a heavy, solid weight. "Good work, Eli," he said, his voice low. "Will you be all right?" Dr. Peterson asked, his medical bag in hand. I just nodded. I couldn't speak. One by one, they filed out. My lawyer, David, the board members, my allies. They had seen the battle, and now they were leaving me with the wreckage. The door clicked shut for the last time, and the silence was complete. Only the four of us were left. Me, Marcus, my granddaughter Imani, who was still half hidden behind Marcus's leg, peering out with wide, terrified eyes, and Alicia, my daughter. She was still on the floor, crumpled against the wall by the grandfather clock. She wasn't sobbing anymore. She was just empty. She was a marionette whose strings had all been cut at once. She was staring at the spot where Greg had stood, her mind clearly unable to process the last 20 minutes. The affair, the embezzlement, the millions, the murder plot. Marcus looked at me. "Eli, what do we do with her?" I looked at my daughter, my only child, the girl I had raised, and I felt nothing. Just a vast, cold emptiness. All the anger from the past few days had burned away, and it left this. Ash. I walked past her. I went to my desk. I'd taught history, but I'd learned more from finance. And the first rule of finance is that every asset and every liability must be accounted for. I had dealt with Greg. He was a liability. Now I had to deal with her. I thought of her. I thought of her as a little girl riding on my shoulders. I thought of my wife Rosalind on her deathbed. "Take care of our baby Eli," she'd whispered. "Don't let the world hurt her." I had tried Rosalind. I swear I tried. I tried to give her the world, and that was my mistake. I had paid for the best private school in Atlanta, the one she wanted to go to because her friends were there. She thought my teacher's salary just stretched. When she met Greg, I saw him for what he was. A flashy, empty suit with greedy eyes. But she was in love. Or she thought she was. She loved the idea of him. He promised her the world. A world I knew my teacher's pension couldn't compete with. A world I knew his entry-level broker's salary couldn't afford. So I helped. I didn't want my daughter to feel less than. I didn't want her to struggle. That's what a father does, right? He protects. The $20,000 deposit for their wedding at the St. Regis, I paid it. I routed it through a discretionary bonus from Greg's firm, which Vanguard just happens to have on its client list. Greg took the credit. He told Alicia he'd closed a big deal. The down payment on their luxury condo, The one they had no business buying. I was the private lender, a shell corporation I set up just for her. A zero-interest loan with no payment schedule. A gift disguised as a mortgage. Their trip to Europe last summer, the one she posted all over social media, the photos of her in Paris and Rome, I paid for it. Every first-class ticket, every five-star hotel, I did it all, secretly. I paid off the credit card bills she thought Greg was handling. I was so terrified of her being unhappy, so terrified of her facing the reality of the man she had married, that I built a fantasy world around her. I built a palace of lies to keep her safe, and in doing so, I had made her weak. I had made her greedy. I had starved her of reality. I had taught her that life had no consequences. I didn't just protect her. I broke her. I made her the perfect willing accomplice for a man like Greg. I took a deep breath. The past was done. It was time to account for the present. I picked up one last folder from my desk. It wasn't the criminal file on Greg. That one was gone. This one was thinner. It was just for her. I walked over to where she was huddled on the floor. She flinched as my shadow fell over her. "Alicia," I said. She looked up. Her eyes were vacant. I didn't hand her the folder. I dropped it. It landed in her lap. What is this now?" she whispered. "More. Are you going to have me arrested too, Daddy?" "That," I said, "is the truth. The truth you never bothered to look for." Her trembling hands fumbled with the cover. She opened it. The first page wasn't a bank statement. It was a photograph. A photograph of Greg and Sarah Klein. They weren't in an office. They were on a beach somewhere tropical. He was kissing her. The date stamp on the photo was from 2 months ago. "That's his lawyer," I said. "They were in the Cayman Islands, on your dime. Or more accurately, on my dime, which I gave to you, which you gave to him, which he spent on her." "No," she whispered, shaking her head. He said he was at a conference." "He lied." I knelt down, my old knees cracking. I knelt so I could look her right in the eyes. "He lied about everything, Alicia. You thought you were part of the con. You were just another victim of it." She started. "You're a fool, Alicia. You married a fool, and he made a fool out of you." I dropped the second set of papers into her lap. "And this is the proof." She unfolded them. Bank transfers, wires. "This," I said, pointing to a line item, "is the $1.2 million he embezzled. And this," I pointed to another, "is the $200,000 loan from the Sharks. And this is the wire transfer he made yesterday for $50,000 from your joint savings account to Sarah Klein's investment company, the one that was going to fund their escape to Costa Rica." She was following the numbers, her face collapsing. "He has nothing, Alicia," I said, my voice flat. "He has less than nothing. And because your name is on the mortgage, because your name is on those credit cards, so do you." I stood up. "The banks have been notified of the fraud. They're freezing everything. They're foreclosing on your condo. You have to be out by Monday." I let the words hang. The affair, the stolen money, the murder plot, the abandonment, the foreclosure. In the space of one evening, she had lost her husband. She had lost her reputation. She had lost her home, and she had lost her father. She just stared at the papers. She looked at the picture of her husband kissing another woman. She looked at the bank statements that proved her entire life was a lie. Then she slowly looked up at me. Her face was completely broken. There were no more tears. There was just nothing. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice like dry leaves, I have nowhere to go." The sirens faded. Greg was gone. The officers were gone. My board of directors, my witnesses, had all filed out one by one, each man patting me on the shoulder, their faces a mask of grim respect. Dr. Peterson was the last to leave. "Call me tomorrow, Eli. We'll talk." I just nodded. The front door clicked shut, and the silence that fell was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was the silence of a battlefield after the bombs have stopped falling thick with the smell of smoke and ruin. Only 4 of us were left. Me, Marcus, my oldest friend who stood like a statue by the fireplace, his face carved from stone. My granddaughter Imani, who was half hidden behind his leg, her small fingers clutching his pants, peering out with wide, terrified eyes. And Alicia, my daughter. She was still on the floor, crumpled against the wall by the grandfather clock right where she had fallen. She was a pathetic, broken thing, a puppet whose strings had all been cut at once. She was staring at the spot where Greg had stood, her mind clearly unable to process the last 20 minutes. The affair, the embezzlement, the millions, the murder plot. Marcus looked at me. Eli, what do we do with her? I looked at my daughter, my only child, the girl I had raised, and I felt nothing. Just a vast, cold, sterile emptiness. All the anger from the past few days, the rage that had fueled this trap had burned away, and it left this, ash. I walked past her. I went to my desk. I had spent my life teaching history, but I had learned more from finance. And the first rule of finance is that every asset and every liability must be accounted for. I had dealt with Greg. He was a liability. Now, I had to deal with her. I thought of her as a little girl riding on my shoulders. I thought of my wife Rosalind on her deathbed, her hand in mine. "Take care of our baby Eli," she'd whispered, her voice like paper. "Don't let the world hurt her." I had tried Rosalind. I swear I tried. I had tried to give her the world. And that was my mistake. I had paid for the best private school in Atlanta, the one she wanted to go to because her friends were there. She thought my teacher's salary just stretched. When she met Greg, I saw him for what he was, a flashy, empty suit with greedy eyes. But she was in love, or she thought she was. She loved the idea of him. He promised her a world I knew my teacher's pension couldn't compete with, a world I knew his entry-level broker's salary couldn't afford, so I helped. I didn't want my daughter to feel less than. I didn't want her to struggle. That's what a father does, right? He protects. The $20,000 deposit for their wedding, I paid it. I routed it through a discretionary bonus from Greg's firm, a firm Vanguard just happens to have on its client list. Greg took the credit. He told Alicia he'd closed a big deal. The down payment on their luxury condo, the one they had no business buying, I was the private lender. A shell corporation I set up just for her. A zero-interest loan with no payment schedule. A gift disguised as a mortgage. Their trip to Europe last summer. The one she posted all over social media, I paid for it. Every first-class ticket, every five-star hotel. I did it all, secretly. I paid off the credit card bills she thought Greg was handling. I was so terrified of her being unhappy, so terrified of her facing the reality of the man she had married, that I built a fantasy world around her. I built a palace of lies to keep her safe. And in doing so, I had made her weak. I had made her greedy. I had starved her of reality. I had taught her that life had no consequences. I didn't just protect her. I broke her. I made her the perfect willing accomplice for a man like Greg. I took a deep breath. The past was done. It was time to account for the present. I picked up one last folder from my desk. This one was thinner. It was just for her. I walked over to where she was huddled on the floor. She flinched as my shadow fell over her. "Alicia," I said. She looked up. Her eyes were vacant, shattered. "Daddy," she whispered. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know he was like that." I just looked at her. I felt nothing. No pity, no anger. Just that cold, clear emptiness. "Didn't you, Alicia?" I said. My voice was quiet. "He told you I was senile, and you believed him. He told you I needed help, and you believed him. He told you I was a poor old man with just this house, and you wanted to believe him." "No," she cried, scrambling to her knees. "No, he twisted everything." "He didn't twist anything," I said, my voice like steel. "He just showed you a path and you chose to walk down it. You chose him over me, Alicia. You chose him over the man who raised you for 42 years. You chose money over the truth. You chose greed over your own father." "I was scared," she shrieked. He was in so much debt. I didn't know what to do." "So you went to my doctor?" I asked. "You lied to my oldest friend, Pete Peterson, trying to get me declared incompetent. Was that being scared, or was that—" What was the word Sarah used? Prudent. She flinched. She had no answer. "And then," I continued, my voice dropping, "then you sat in a room and you listened to that thing plot my murder. I didn't say yes. You didn't say no. I roared, the first time I had raised my voice all night.
The force of it made her fall back against the wall. You stayed silent. You sat there while he planned to kill me. And your only question, your only contribution, was about the will. You were worried about Imani getting the money, not about your father dying. She collapsed back onto the floor, sobbing hysterically. Please, Daddy.
Don't. Please don't. Don't call the police. Don't have me arrested. Please, not for me, for Imani. What will happen to Imani? Please. I stood over her. I looked at her for a long time. This broken, selfish child I had raised. You are right about one thing, I said. Imani. I thought about my granddaughter, that brave little girl who had tried to save me. I will not have you arrested, Alicia. I will not send you to jail. A look of pure, desperate relief washed over her face.
Oh, Daddy, thank you. Thank you.
Do not thank me. I cut her off. I am not doing this for you. I am doing this for her. I will not have her grow up visiting both her mother and her father in prison. She has suffered enough because of you both. But you are done, I said. As of this moment, you have lost your inheritance. Every penny, every stock, every property, everything that was meant for you is gone. It will go to Imani. And it will go to the Rosalind Vance Foundation. Her face, which had been relieved, now turned to horror.
No, Daddy, you can't. The inheritance, that's mine.
It was never yours, I said. It was mine to give, and I am giving it to someone who deserves it. I walked to my desk. I pulled out my personal checkbook. I wrote on it, $10,000. I tore it out and walked back to her. I dropped it in her lap. What's this? She whispered. That is $10,000, I said. It is the last dollar you will ever receive from me. It is enough for you to rent a small apartment in a part of town you've never been to. It is enough for you to buy groceries while you find a job, a real job, like the ones normal people have. A job. Yes, a job. You will learn what it means to work. You will learn what it means to earn. You will learn, Alicia, what you should have learned 20 years ago. I turned and walked toward the front door. I opened it. The cool night air felt good. You are no longer welcome in this house, I said, not looking back. Get your things. Get out.
But, Imani, she cried, scrambling to her feet. My baby, you can't take my baby.
I am not taking her, I said, finally turning to face her. I am saving her. I am saving her from you. I am saving her from the poison you and that man almost destroyed this family with. You will have visitation, supervised, on weekends. But I will be her guardian. I will raise her. I will teach her what I failed to teach you. That dignity is not for sale. That love is not a transaction. And that you never betray the people who trust you. She stood there in the middle of my living room, the check in her hand. She looked at the check. She looked at me. She looked at the door. She realized it was all gone. The house, the husband, the money, the father, and now her daughter. She had lost everything. She didn't say another word. She clutched that check, that $10,000 insult, in her fist. She picked up her designer purse from the floor, and she walked out of my house. She walked out of my life. I closed the door behind her. I turned the deadbolt, and for the first time in 42 years, I felt the weight of being a father finally lift. The house was quiet. I didn't sleep for a week, not real sleep. I would sit in the armchair in the living room, the one Rosalind, my late wife, always said was perfectly worn to my shape, and I'd just listen. The house was quiet. It was a different kind of quiet than before. It wasn't the silence of secrets. It was the silence of an amputation. Greg was gone. The papers, the news. They called him the Peachtree Predator. They said he'd been indicted. His face was all over the Atlanta news. He was facing 20 years for the embezzlement, not to mention the conspiracy charges. And Alicia, my daughter, she was also gone. She had taken the check, the $10,000. She had walked out that door, and she hadn't looked back. I hadn't heard from her in 7 days. I didn't know where she was. I didn't know if she was safe. A part of me, the father, the 76-year-old fool, was terrified for her. The part of me that was Elias Vance knew she had to hit rock bottom, that I couldn't build her another fantasy world to live in. So the house was just me and Imani. We were in Alicia's old room, my daughter's childhood bedroom. packing it up. Amani was putting old stuffed animals into a cardboard box. I was taking down posters of pop stars from 20 years ago. The room smelled like dust and forgotten memories. Amani stopped holding a small, worn-out teddy bear. "Grandpa," she asked. Her voice was small. "Yes, baby girl? Is Mommy ever coming back?" I stopped folding an old sweater. I looked at her, 10 years old. She had watched her father be arrested. She had watched her mother collapse and then disappear. She had seen things no child should ever have to see. "I don't know, Amani," I said, and the honesty of it hurt. Your mother has a lot to think about. She made some very big adult mistakes. Because of the money." I nodded slowly. "Yes, mostly because of the money." She looked down at the bear. "Are we bad, Grandpa? Because we have the money now. We're the rich ones, right?" My heart just broke. I knelt down, my old knees cracking on the hardwood floor. I put my hands on her shoulders. "Angel, listen to me. Money isn't good or bad. It's not a person. It's just an amplifier. It just makes you more of what you already are. Your father, he was greedy and desperate. The money just showed it. Your mother, she was weak and scared. And the money it just broke her. What does it make you?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I didn't have an answer. "I don't know, baby," I said. "Right now, I guess it just makes me tired." The doorbell rang. I tensed. For half a second, my heart leaped. Alicia. But I knew it wasn't. It was Marcus. He let himself in. He'd been checking on us every day, bringing groceries, checking the locks. He stood in the doorway of the bedroom, looking at the boxes we were packing. He was in his full suit as always. He looked so out of place in this small, childish room. "Cleaning house, Eli." "Something like that," I said, standing up. My back ached. "Come on, Mark. I'll make us some coffee. The real stuff. No more of that instant coffee teacher life." We went to the kitchen. I pulled out the expensive Blue Mountain coffee beans I usually kept hidden in the back of the pantry. The smell, rich and strong, filled the kitchen. It was the smell of my other life. Marcus leaned against the counter. He watched me as I worked the grinder. "So, it's done. Greg is going to prison for a long, long time. Sarah Klein is singing like a canary trying to cut a deal to save her own skin. Alicia is in the wind." He sipped the coffee I handed him. "What's next, Eli?" "What do you mean, what's next?" I said. "I raise Amani. I tend my garden. I live." Marcus shook his head. "No, I mean Vanguard. The board is asking. They want you back, Eli. Not just as a silent partner. They want you in the chair, as chairman of the board. They want Elias Vance, the founder, back at the helm, officially." He was asking me to go back, to run the $200 million fund, to put the suit back on for real this time, to go back to the world of numbers and strategies and hostile takeovers. I looked at my old friend. He knew the answer before I even said it. I laughed. It was a short, dry, tired sound. "Mark, I'm 76 years old. I just survived a hostile takeover by my own family. I think I'm done running anything." "But the money, Eli, the company." "The money," I interrupted, "is the whole damn problem. It's been the problem from the start." I handed him his mug. "I'm 76, Mark. I'm done working. I've been working since I was 9 years old, shining shoes on Auburn Avenue. I've had enough. I'm retired. For real this time." "So what happens to Vanguard?" he asked. "What happens to all of it? You can't just let it sit there. Money is a tool, Eli. It has to be used." "You're right," I said. "You're absolutely right." I walked to the kitchen window and looked out at my small backyard, the yard where Alicia learned to ride a bike, the yard where Rosalind planted her garden. "You know what Rosalind always wanted," I said quietly. "What's that?" Marcus asked. "She always hated this neighborhood. Not because it was poor, but because it was stuck. She hated that the kids here, our kids, black kids, had nowhere to go after school. Nowhere safe. Nowhere to learn a trade or code or just be kids. They were good kids, but they were bored. And bored kids get into trouble. I turned back to him. She always had this dream, Mark, a crazy dream. She wanted to buy that old derelict cotton mill down by the railroad tracks. Marcus's eyes widened. The old mill, Eli, that thing's been condemned for 30 years. It's a pile of bricks. I know, I smiled. I said it was a crazy dream, but she saw it differently. She saw a community center, a place for after-school programs, a tech hub for kids who couldn't afford a computer, a trade school to teach them carpentry and welding. She called it the Rosalind Vance Center for Our Future. I took a sip of my coffee. She drew up the plans, you know. I still have them, hidden in my desk, right alongside all my Vanguard stock certificates. Eli, Marcus said, and his voice was soft. He was understanding. You're not serious. I've never been more serious in my life, I said. I've spent 50 years building a fortune I was afraid to use. My daughter proved that hoarding it was just as toxic as spending it. All that money, it didn't save her. It just made her a target for men like Greg. It made her weak. I looked at my old friend. I think it's time to finally make my wife's dream come true. I'm going to liquidate a third of my shares. I'm going to buy that pile of bricks, and I'm going to build her center. Marcus was smiling now, a real wide smile. That's a hell of a retirement project, Eli. That's a billion-dollar project, not a... But who's going to run it? You said you were done working. I am, I said. I smiled. But I know exactly who's going to run it. 6 months later. The Georgia sun was warm, not hot. It streamed down on a crowd of over 500 people. They were gathered in front of a building that had once been a pile of bricks, a forgotten relic of the Civil War era. The old Atlanta cotton mill. It wasn't a pile of bricks anymore. It was a masterpiece of glass steel and reclaimed wood. The original brickwork had been restored, but now massive windows opened up the old factory floor to the light. I could see the state-of-the-art computer lab through the window. I could see the basketball court. I could see the sign hanging over the polished oak doors. The Rosalind Vance Center for Our Future. My wife's dream. Made real. I was sitting in the front row wearing my Brioni suit. No cardigan this time. Beside me, Marcus Reynolds looked like a proud father. And on the stage, holding the oversized ceremonial scissors, was my granddaughter Imani. She was 11 years old now, and she looked so much like Rosalind it almost hurt to look at her. She was the official junior chairwoman of the board. Marcus finished his speech, his voice booming over the speakers. And so Vanguard Strategies is proud to dedicate this center a $10 million investment in the heart of Atlanta, an investment in the future of this community. It is my honor to introduce the girl who represents that future, our junior chairwoman, Miss Imani Miller. The crowd applauded. Imani stepped up to the ribbon. She was nervous, I could tell, but she held those scissors like a warrior. She looked right at me. I nodded. She smiled, and she cut the ribbon. The crowd cheered. The press cameras flashed. I was watching Imani. I was watching my wife's legacy come to life. So I almost missed her. Alicia. She wasn't on the stage. She wasn't in the front row. She was in the back, near the entrance. She was wearing a simple dark blue polo shirt, the kind with a small embroidered logo on it. The Rosalind Vance Center staff uniform. She was arranging chairs, folding chairs for the overflow crowd. She had lost weight. Her face was thin. The expensive highlighted hair she'd had was gone, replaced by her natural hair pulled back in a simple tight bun. She looked tired. She looked worn. But as she lined up a row of chairs, her movements were precise, deliberate. She wasn't faking it. She was working. My mind went back to 2 months after Greg's arrest, after the chaos had settled, after he had been formally indicted and was awaiting a trial he would certainly lose. She had shown up at my door, not the grand door of the Vanguard Tower, the simple painted door of my little house. She looked just as bad as she did today. Thin, worn, scared. "Daddy," she had whispered through the screen door. I didn't open it. I just looked at her through the mesh. "What do you want, Alicia?" I have nowhere to go," she said, her voice breaking. "The bank, they took the condo, the $10,000. It's gone. I'm living in my car." "That sounds like a you problem," I said. My voice was cold. "Daddy, please. she cried, pressing her hands against the screen. I have nothing. Greg, his lawyers, they're trying to say I was the mastermind, that I controlled him. And didn't you, I asked, didn't you go to Dr. Peterson? Didn't you sit there in silence while that monster plotted to kill me? I was scared, she shrieked. I was terrified of him. You weren't scared, I said. You were greedy. There's a difference. You weren't afraid of him. You were afraid of this, being poor, having nothing, and you were willing to let him murder me to avoid it. You just weren't smart enough to see he was going to betray you too. She had collapsed on my porch, just a heap of sobs. Please, Daddy, I'll do anything, just don't let me be homeless. Please, for Imani. Let me see Imani. I had stared at her for a long time. The father in me, the fool, wanted to open that door, to hold her, to fix it. But the man who had founded Vanguard, the man who had survived, knew better. You want a job, Alicia? I had asked. She looked up, her face streaked with tears and dirt. A job? Yes, a job. I'm building your mother's center. It's hard work. It's cleaning. It's data entry. It's filing. It pays minimum wage. No benefits yet. You'll report to Marcus's assistant. You won't report to me. You won't see me. You'll live in the staff dorms, a single room, shared bathroom. You will work 10 hours a day. You will prove that you are willing to start from zero, or you can leave. I had expected her to scream, to curse me, to walk away. She just nodded. Okay, she whispered. Okay, Daddy. I'll do it. I'll take the job. And she had, for 6 months. She had shown up every day. She had filed 10 years of backlog donor paperwork. She had scrubbed floors. She had taken inventory. She had not complained. She had not asked for a raise. She had not asked for a single thing. And now here she was, at the grand opening, setting up chairs. The ceremony was over. The crowd was moving inside for the tour. Marcus was leading the press. Imani was holding my hand. Are you proud of me, Grandpa? I am more proud of you than words can say, baby girl. As we walked toward the new doors, I saw Alicia. She was standing by the entrance, holding a box of programs, handing them out. She saw me coming. She tensed. Her eyes dropped to the floor. She held out a program to me like I was any other guest. I stopped. I looked at her. The tired eyes, the plain uniform, the hands that were no longer manicured but chapped from work. She didn't look up. She was just waiting for me to pass, for me to ignore her. I didn't take the program. I just nodded. It was a small movement, barely perceptible, just a dip of my chin. I see you. She looked up, her eyes wide. She wasn't expecting it. Her lips parted. She thought maybe I was forgiving her, and she nodded back. A tiny, jerky, terrified nod. It wasn't forgiveness, not even close. Forgiveness was a mountain we might never climb, but it was something. It was respect. It was the first honest transaction we had had in over a decade. She was Alicia, the staff member. I was Elias Vance, the founder. And for the first time, that was enough. I took the program from her hand, our fingers brushing for a fraction of a second. Good work, Miss Miller, I said, my voice quiet, professional. The place looks good. Thank you, Mr. Vance, she whispered. I walked past her into the bright, beautiful building my wife had dreamed of holding my granddaughter's hand. The past was behind me. The future was just getting started. The trial was a quiet affair. It's strange, but the loudest moments of your life are almost never the ones in a courtroom. The real explosions, the real verdicts. They happen in your own living room, they happen in whispers. The trial was just a formality. Marcus's legal team, Vanguard's legal team, was a machine. They presented the evidence with cold, sterile precision. The recordings of Greg and Sarah, the recordings of Greg and Alicia, the bank statements showing the $1.2 million embezzlement, the testimony from the loan shark who cut a deal to describe how Greg had promised him my house. The testimony from Dr. Egan, who cried on the stand and told the jury Greg had threatened him too. A lie, but a useful one. It was all very clean. Greg's defense was exactly what he'd screamed at me that night, that I was the monster, that I was a vindictive, rich old man who had entrapped him. His lawyer tried to paint me as a puppet master. The jury, 12 normal working-class men and women from Atlanta, looked at me, a 76-year-old man. And then they looked at Greg, a 44-year-old con artist who had been caught red-handed. They were out for less than an hour. 20 years. That was the sentence. 20 years in a state prison for conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to commit fraud and felony embezzlement. Sarah Klein, his mistress, got 15. She had tried to turn on him, but the recordings of her planning the escape to Costa Rica, the ones where she called Alicia stupid, that sealed her fate. Dr. Egan, the fake doctor, got 10. Justice, clean, simple, done. I had tried to put it all behind me. It had been 6 months since the sentencing. The Rosalind Vance Center was open. Alicia was working there quietly, diligently. Imani was doing well in school. Life was moving on. And then the letter came. I knew who it was from before I even saw the name. The stamp on the envelope was from the Georgia State Penitentiary. My hands were steady as I opened it. I was in my study. I was alone. Imani was at the center doing her homework. Alicia was in a finance class I was making her take. I unfolded the pages. It was Greg's handwriting, angry, jagged. "You old bastard." That's how it started. Not, "Dear Elias," not, "I'm sorry." You think you won. You think you're sitting up there in your tower a king. You're a monster, Eli. You're the one who lied. You're the one who trapped me. I kept reading. It wasn't a letter. It was a testament of hate. You had everything, hundreds of millions of dollars, and you watched me. You watched my family, your daughter, struggle. You let us drown in debt just so you could feel powerful. You let us scramble for a few $1,000s when you could have fixed it all with a snap of your fingers. If you had just been a father, if you had just been a man, if you had just shared what you had, none of this would have happened. You did this. You sent me here. You destroyed your own daughter. Do you even see her? Do you know what you've done? She's working like a dog for you, cleaning floors, taking out the trash at your stupid center, my wife, a maid, all because of you. You took her house, you took her husband, you took her life, all to protect your precious secret money. You could have helped us. We were family, but you'd rather be right than be a father. You'd rather win. I don't regret what I did. I only regret I didn't know how rich you really were from the start. I would have aimed higher. I wouldn't have bothered with the house. I would have gone for the whole thing. I regret I trusted Alicia. She was too weak, too much like you. I hope you're happy. I hope you sit on your mountain of money and choke on it. You didn't just trap me. You trapped yourself. You're a lonely old man who destroyed his own family. You won nothing. You are nothing. I'll see you in hell. Greg, I finished the letter. I reread it. Once. Twice. I was looking for one word, one single solitary word. The word sorry. It wasn't there. There was no remorse, no accountability, no understanding of what he had done. He hadn't just tried to steal from me. He had tried to steal my mind. He had plotted to kill me. He had planned to abandon my daughter and leave her ruined. And after all of it, after 6 months in a cell, the only thing he regretted was that he had failed. The only thing he had learned was that he should have been more ruthless. He was right about one thing. I did trap him. And in that moment, I knew I would do it again 1,000 times over. My hands weren't shaking. I wasn't angry. I just felt cold. I felt the finality of it all. I stood up from my desk. I walked out of my study and into my home office. I picked up the letter, all 3 pages of his jagged, hateful scrawl. I didn't crumple it. I didn't tear it. I fed it page by page into my heavy-duty paper shredder. The sound of the machine whirring was the only sound in the house. I watched the words, monster. Trapped me. If you had shared, turn into a meaningless pile of confetti. I looked at the shreds of paper in the bin. I finally understood. I could not change him. I could not fix him. He would sit in that cell for 20 years, and every single day he would wake up convinced that he was the victim. He would die believing that I was the one who had wronged him. I realized I had been holding on to one last stupid piece of hope. The hope that someday he would understand, that he would repent. Now I knew he was just a void, a hollow man, eaten alive by his own greed and resentment. I can't change him. I can't fix what's broken in him. I can only change my reaction. I can choose to let him rot in his own hate. I turned off the shredder. The house was quiet again. I realized he was right about another thing. He had taught me something. He had taught me that I can't control what other people become, not even my own daughter. I can only control myself. I can only control my own actions. I can't change his past, but I can change my future, and I can stop him from being a part of it. I looked at the shreds of paper, and I let him go. I'm 77 years old now. I'm standing on the balcony of my office. The office isn't in the Vanguard Tower anymore. I gave that one to Marcus. My office is here on the top floor of the Rosalind Vance Center overlooking the old Fourth Ward. It's not a pile of bricks anymore. Below me I can hear the sounds of life. I hear the squeak of sneakers on the new basketball court. I hear the click-clack of keyboards from the tech lab we built. And I hear laughter. The sound of children who have a safe place to go after school. The sound of my wife's dream made real. Amani stands next to me. She's 12 now. She's tall. She holds a new tablet in her hand, but she's not playing games. She's looking down at the crowd of kids. The after-school enrollment is up 30% this quarter, Grandpa, she says, sounding just like Marcus. Our projections were too low. We'll need to increase the budget for the tutoring program. I just smile. You'll handle it, Madam Chairwoman. She looks up at me, the late afternoon sun catching the flecks of gold in her eyes, Rosalind's eyes. Grandpa, she asks, her voice suddenly small again, can I ask you something? Anything, baby girl. She's quiet for a moment, watching the kids playing basketball. Do you ever regret it? Hiding everything, lying about who you were? I look out over the city. I think about Greg. He's in the state penitentiary. He'll be there for a long time. His letters stopped coming. I heard he's working in the prison library, a fitting place for a man who thought he was so smart but never read the fine print. I think about Alicia. She's not Miss Miller anymore. She's Dr. Miller. She finished her degree. She got her master's in social work. She runs this entire center now. She's tough. She's fair. She's nothing like the woman I knew. She's better. She's what her mother always wanted her to be. She and I, we're not what we were. That old broken father-daughter relationship is gone. In its place is something new, something quiet, something strong. It's built on respect, the kind you earn, the hard way. She still calls me Mr. Vance, but last week when we approved the new budget for the women's shelter she's starting, she hugged me. Just a quick, tight hug. It was the first time in 2 years. It was enough. I look down at Amani, my granddaughter, my legacy. Do I regret it? I say, my voice quiet. No, Angel, I don't regret it. But it hurt everyone. It hurt Mommy. Yes, I said. It did. But sometimes you have to let things burn. Sometimes the only way to get rid of the sickness is to set the whole poisoned field on fire. Your mother, she had a sickness called greed fed to her by a man who was even sicker than she was. I couldn't cure her. She had to cure herself. I put my arm around her small shoulders. Your grandmother and I, we built this fortune. But for 50 years I was a coward. I hid it. I was afraid of what it would do. And my fear, my silence, it almost destroyed us all. It almost got me killed. It wasn't my money that was the problem, Amani. It was their character. It was my silence. I look out at the city. True wealth isn't the money, baby girl. It's not the stocks or the buildings or the numbers on a screen. True wealth is wisdom. It's the wisdom to protect what you love, to protect your family. Even, and this is the hardest part, even when you have to protect them from themselves. Amani leans her head against my side. So you weren't pretending to be weak. I smile. I look down at the playground, at the children running at the future my wife dreamed of. No, Angel, I say. I wasn't pretending. I was just preparing. There's nothing wrong with being a quiet old man. But it's always a good idea to let them think the old lion is asleep, right before he reminds them that he still has teeth. My 77 years taught me that respect is not a gift given with age. It is a boundary that must be enforced, especially with those you love. Greed whispers in the language of help and concern, but its actions are always control. The greatest strength is not in the fortune you build, but in the wisdom to protect it and yourself with silence and strategy. Never mistake a quiet man for a weak one. The lion is most dangerous, not when it roars, but when it watches. Did you like this story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.